Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is David Palmer, the Leo King. Welcome to After Dark, the spiritual talk show, where we go into a lot of different subjects. And of course, we're here at highvibe.tv. Make sure that you check it out, highvibe.tv. We got apps. We're on iOS, we're on Android, and we're on Apple TV. And of course, we have tons of free content like this show and Deep Astrology. And we've got art. We've got so much going on over there. And you can watch it all on the apps or your Apple TV, or watch it on the website. And that's, of course, how you support shows like this to be on the air for free. Tonight we have a very special night ahead. We got a lot of guests on the show. And you know what? This is totally understandable with this full moon in Aquarius energy this week. Let's go down the line. We've got Sarah Paasch in the house. We've got Maren Altman here from New York. We've got Serah D'Laine here. She's old soul fan of my life. I've never had her on this show yet, but you've seen her with me in the past before. She's awesome. She's here in LA. And we've got the spirit advisor in the house. What's going on, everyone?
Yo, yo, yo.
I know that everybody has to kind of share mics, but I just kind of want to start the conversation off with just like one. I mean, we are in a full moon. I am an astrologer, so I do want to bring that up. It's a very unique full moon. I want to kind of see what people are feeling about, because to me, it's the peak of energy right now that's coming. And then there's a lot more peaks after, but I just want to get where everybody's kind of feeling with this full moon in Aquarius. Anybody can go.
Whoa.
It's about whoever captures it first, just grab the mic.
Yeah, so this is a really unexpectedly powerful full moon that I've been feeling it for the last 2 days, and I feel like it's really highlighting, our place in the galaxy. I feel like it's like eyes from all over the star systems are like looking at us right now. Like, what are they going to do? What's next? Like, they just went through one of the most intense interdimensional portal skip shifts they've ever been through. Do they even realize it? What's going to change? And so I feel like the stars are more watchful on us. I feel like there's this palpable energy in the air. I feel like I've been able to see energy in the air more like clearly. So yeah, that's what I've been feeling. It's super activating.
I know.
I think that with it highlighting the Leo Aquarius with it highlighting like the Leo Aquarius axis, when I was looking at the chart for this, it just really brought up like service to self versus service to others, and like the choice between doing something in the moment that gratifies yourself versus a larger choice to using that gift of what you're good at in larger service. Because with like Sun, Venus, Cazimi, like it could sound too good to be true and just doing what in the moment feels like the correct culmination, because full moons being a time of culmination, maybe what we're completing feels like, oh, I did this, but then rethinking it in terms of I am serving the collective by doing this and providing the gift. That's what I've been seeing just with a lot of people happening to unleash, like finalizing projects, or a lot of things are coming to a culmination like naturally around the full moon period. And I've luckily seen a lot of the energy been, I'm contributing this to a larger good, and that even though it came through me, it came through the energy to serve everyone, because the aspects to this as well just highlight overall service and unity, and understanding like how the choice to contribute to a larger good might be a more preferable timeline to just serving yourself in the long term.
I got something to riff on that. I feel like to add to that though too, there's like another layer that I'm getting with this polarity, which is, it's interesting because it's fire for Leo, right? And I'm getting fire and water, but Aquarius, right? So Aquarius, it's like right now, it's like any holes in anybody's cups or any kind of like pouring containers are being like resolved, are being the culmination is like we're like, it needs to be solved, it needs to be finished, needs to be wrapped up, because, and it's through using our logic to like take a step back and be like just no nonsense, like that's got to stop, because I don't have enough water to go all the way, and I'm not going to keep pouring my water into your cup with a hole in it. Like fix the hole in your cup.
I like that.
Or like you're gonna lose your water, and I'm gonna keep going.
It's kind of like because the before the Cancer Capricorn eclipse, before the Cancer Capricorn eclipse season, the Aquarius Leo eclipses, it almost feels like because that was about a year and a half ago that would have finalized, that it's maybe the water was overflowing and it's now stopped, and it's like culminated in the choice to let that overall process end on a high note of like, however this ended, I'm gonna deliver that to the greater good and not try to pursue this cycle any further. And like it's been a release, but the release into equilibrium, and not making it me, like I'm releasing this out into the world, more of like I devote whatever my end goal was, and from that I move forward.
What are you feeling, Serah? You are a Libra. You are the relationship queen.
Oh boy. So how I feel about this energy right now, and a lot of where I put the majority of my focus is mostly with like the moon cycles. So I love and like honor everybody's like full astrological wisdom. And for me, it really comes down to like simplifying. We were able to go through these transitions no matter what sign the moon is in. But it's always an opportunity for us to say, okay, everything is, like I like that you said, like, okay, it's about filling up, or you have the boat, but then you have like these holes in the boat. Mm-hmm. I look at, like I heard what you said, and I also look at it as, where do we have holes in the boat where we don't need to have holes in the boat, and then where are we actually intentionally creating holes so that then it can drain out the things that aren't serving us for this full moon, so then we can actually bring in the energy that's been stimulated from the new moon. So for me, it's like a cycle of like, okay, you start on the new moon and that's like gas pedal on. Cool. What are you setting your intentions for? What are your emotional mastery? What is like the visualizations that you want to create? And by the time we hit the full moon, then it's like, well, what didn't work from the previous cycle? What are you creating that hole to like release out of, so that then now you can magnetize things in towards you? So when it comes to like relationship stuff, what's out, what wasn't working. And I always take the focus back to self. Like how we are in relationships with ourselves obviously sets the tone for all of our other relationships. So whatever's not working within you, that's what's going to show up in all of your external relationships, and reflected really, really intensely right now.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I love all these perspectives, especially I like this whole like galactic watching, like, because it's been so gnarly coming to this point. Because I like how Serah brings up full moons are these really big points of like, okay, what is it? It kind of is an apex point. But to me, it's like there's so many apex points happening at once at this apex point. Yeah. With just all these aspects, with Sun, Venus, with the Yod. Because the Yod to me has been the biggest thing. Like it's been like with a south node that's very karmic with Saturn, with its in its dignity, all these dignified planets. This is never going to happen again in our lives. So, especially with this much dignity around. So it's potent. It's like super potent. But I think that the one thing, especially I love this filling of the cups, is I think with Aquarius, though, it wants to fill those, but there's another part where Aquarius likes to detach fully. So people are going to be approached with filling their cups, but it's like, are they going to be willing to actually fill them? Maybe people like get afraid of actually filling it. Maybe they got used to it being empty, and then they want to carry on that story like, well, it's empty. Chiron and Aries, like I'm wounded. It didn't happen the way I want to. And then people are victim mentality of like this, and I want to bug out, and I need help. You need to help me fill my cup. You need to help me. I need more help. And Leo's kind of like, the king's not going to walk down the fucking castle and start walking down there and helping the blacksmith take a shit, when he has a hemorrhoid. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of
I love your analogies.
Because we just had like that eclipse cycle with Saturn and Pluto, like this cycle in Aquarius doesn't have the malefics of Saturn, Pluto, and the South Node directly being involved. Like I think we've been used to, oh wow, this is such a difficult time, like the life is being sucked out of me, but this isn't involving that. Like it's an aversion, like the full moon in Aquarius isn't actually seeing those planets, like they are involved, but we're not having to be influenced by them. And I think people might be in a victim mentality of still thinking that they're in that time of destruction, when even though this is culmination, it's like our own doing and our own volition being able to culminate something instead of it being taken from us. Like this is actually we are getting the agency, and with that galactic view, I'm just imagining like extra dimensionals being like, okay, yeah, this is your time actually. Like it's not us like sucking the life out of you like Dementors and Harry Potters.
But they still are.
But it's more like we have more ease, even if we're used to the mindset of like, oh, this is so difficult. It's like, it's not really. Like we have the chance to make it how we want to.
It's a choice.
Right.
It's coming down to the choices that you're making.
Right.
And if you're still holding on to a past story, then you're choosing to reread that story. Like that's the like reel that everybody has to like, I feel like we are opening and ever more opening that conversation of like, just get real with yourself. Like everybody's done with the bullshit. Everybody's done with the fake facades. Everybody's done with like the who you're pretending to be. And everybody's done with their like, nobody wants to repeat the past anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody's been heartbroken. There's so many like heartbreak situations happening right now. And even if that's like personally in like your life or if that's in like relationships, but those are old stories. They're done.
Yeah, South Node and Saturn. I think that this is, we've never seen South Node Saturn in Capricorn, like for millennium. Okay, like, okay, just like with Pluto, like it's been thousands. We're talking about karmic lines of thousands of years. Okay.
Karmic lines, what? Finishing?
Finishing.
Like completion, and but also
Dissolving.
the delusion that people could try to, like you say, replay the story. Some people actually, it's kind of funny. I watch like Instagram stories. Like I watch people who are like, I'm back with my ex from 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, okay. Like, gonna go play that one again.
But I also I was okay. Wait.
I'm not saying it's bad. I didn't even get to put in any interjection.
I think it's more like, and actually now that we're talking about this, we talked about this like before the eclipse season, I think it was. We had the conversation about how like it's time to like start the new storylines.
Yeah.
I think it's just like it's very clear that any kind of like karmic type of situation that's happening, that's playing itself out at this point, there's so much choice involved. Like you can walk away. Like you've completed that karma.
Like you
can continue participating, or at any point you can walk away. And that was a huge part of the weekend, was like the concept of grace for me, and how the difference between karma and grace is like grace is knowing that you can stay if you want, or you can go and you can evolve on that path even deeper, or you can switch to a new kind of journey. I was gonna say on yours too, what came for me is I got a Reiki session today, and she was like sitting at my head, and she's like, Serah, what are you needing to surrender to right now? And I'm like, the first thing that comes in is I get the image of kind of like this past ego identity, like Saturn South Node on my sun. I'm like, I think I need to surrender this like past self that's ready to die. And then all of a sudden it shifted, and it was like, no, I'm needing to surrender to this new life that's like waiting to live. And it wasn't this like heavy energy. It was just this like liberating energy. And I think the Sun Venus Cazimi today, like I felt like resurrection, like Venus felt like
she's finally in the chariot.
Yeah, like
combust.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like she is just like liberated, and it's like
her new cycle is beginning.
It's like, beginning, and I'm just like and like the divine masculine part of me has like this deep respect for like what that divine feminine has been through, and it's just like, I'm good. Like we're good. Like I respect that part. Like let's go.
Can I ask you something? Do you feel like you allowed, like I hear you talking about like your inner divine masculine through that experience? Did it feel like there was a part of your divine feminine that you were allowing to be unsuppressed or like released or unleashed, like in a new sort of way? Like when you say like there was a deep respect from the masculine, but like what was her experience?
Oh, well, I think she was like, she's liberated through his participation in this way, this like co-creative, like, all right, like, they're on the same page, and it's beautiful. They're like, I don't know. It's very, and it's also like, it's not in a moment that it's happening. It's something that's been transpiring, but I feel like today talk about culmination, and now it's like that is where the whole full moon concept of like the cup, it's like the divine masculine is not going to sit and fight with somebody who has holes in their cup and is like fight, because that's like what it is. It's like they're fighting with you, and you're like, I got to keep going.
I feel like that's the divine feminine too. She's like, I'm not, no more the kitty games. We're not playing that anymore.
Right,
We're not fighting with that.
We're not draining energy.
We're not draining energy.
I
Like if
often-
we're not like in and going, it's like, what the fuck is the point?
I think like the idea of the divine feminine holding space and then the divine masculine filling it, just in terms of energy, like makes sense. And so the divine feminine has finally formed the cup that is like stable enough to then be filled, instead of maybe with Venus being behind the sun and then being combust the past few days. With Venus combust, it's just kind of like she's unseen. Like the light of the sun is not including her, it's casting that shadow. And so Venus's qualities of like maybe harmony and ease were kind of like there was just this rigidity to interaction recently, and now that she has softened her edges so that the cup can come together, like the divine masculine can then fill, so that we're holding space for one another in an empowered, energetic way. And because of that unity, there's then energy, because both facets of activity and receptivity are aligned instead of neither showing up for the other, and there being this out of whack tension between like some of us not doing shit and then some of us like overworking, and then the other person is overcompensating, and like no one is really being honest, so that it becomes this like this out of balance, out of equilibrium shit show. And now one is holding space for the other, and through that they're then being the counterpart at the same time.
But I feel like with this point, because this is this isn't a Venus retrograde like Cassini, where it's being burned out by the sun. It's on the other side of the sun. We're the farthest from Venus that we can be. I almost feel like, and I want to ask, because I'm a man, so, and of course I'm in touch with my feminine, but I'm not the embodiment of feminine, if that makes sense. In this body, I'm genetically a male. So don't women like that moment where it's like, one, you're not being in front burned out, like, you're actually on the other side, where you kind of get a moment where it's like, I can kind of be free for a second and like not be seen fully, but readjust and understand how I want to come back into this game? Because there's a difference between a retrograde, because it's in front of the sun. It's like, you know what I mean? This is a totally different thing. This is Venus going, okay, I'm not in the light, but I'm not like being castrated or doing nothing. Like I'm just being like around. I'm going around this corner here. Woohoo!
Like it's not about introspection.
It's like
a
before
retrograde.
walking the red carpet. It's kind of like, it's like ladies, how they do their hair and they get all ready. But like if it's Venus, retrograde Cassini, it's a little bit like, you're like being looked at and being, look what you just did, woman, and all that old kind of shit that women had to deal with.
Since she's direct now, I think that like it's like she's fully prepared to walk the red carpet. Like she's like, she has her shit together. Like the heels are scuffed so that she doesn't slip. Everything is well tailored and fitted. And so when she comes out, the space can then be filled by as if the gaze of everyone was the masculine space filling that. It's like, okay, feels comfortable in owning that space, and so that it can be filled by who she wants to see. Because especially in the like Leo, like this is more playful and not as serious. Like it's just it's
But Pluto quincunxing Sun Venus,
but they can't see each other.
They can't.
Yeah.
But there is that even more can't see of just with Pluto with South Node and that weird quincunx, to where it's like there is kind of the old way of kind of trying to pull it back. Like, I don't want you to go on the red carpet, or you know what I mean? And that's just like a delusion of some sort of weird old rules or old
Could
parts
that be a
of yourself.
confidence thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's
like an inner conflict?
It's really deep subconscious, like bugs.
Patterning of like paranoia.
Parasitic brain.
Like,
bugs.
what are you making it? Yeah. What's the meaning behind all of it?
Or trying to, with Pluto, I think, a manipulation. So like with that not being integrated, it's like, what do you, instead of just going out and maybe holding the space that that you are designed to hold, maybe you think, oh, if I put myself in a certain light or present myself a certain way, then the audience will then fill the space in a certain way, instead of just being like, I'm going to be the container that I know that I'm adequate to hold space as. And so because with that aversion, because they're not seeing each other, there might just be something unintegrated. It's kind of like an itch you can't scratch. There might be a paranoia of like, should I be presenting myself in another way to then subversively manipulate those who see me into seeing me as something else? Especially with Leo, there can be a performativity, so there might be a risk of, am I performing in order to warrant a reaction that I think would feel better than just me feeling good in the first place?
Yeah, it reminds me of the, did you guys rewatch the Oscars that one year where the guys from South Park came in and they were on acid
No, I wasn't
and they wore
watching.
women's dresses?
I have no idea what you're referring to.
It was like one of the biggest Oscar moments of all
Oscars?
time. The guys who
What
did,
year was this?
This was like 2009, 2001.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the same. But long story short was they showed up on acid, took a limo to the Oscars, wore women's dresses, walked outside the limo when the acid was hitting, and said, "We are not going to talk about what we're wearing." So anytime they were like, "What are you wearing?" You know how they do that at the Oscars? They're just like,
Silent.
"This is just so great. The Oscars are so wonderful. Like, you know, like the sun's so great today." Like, you know what I mean? So
Right.
they would avoid it the whole time because they were literally dressed as women.
Pluto, Uranus, Venus.
And
like,
I think
not-
that Maren brings up a great point of just like, I'm just going to be whoever I am, even though this
Yeah.
might be a little bit weird. But like, I'm going to be, that's who they are. Like,
Yeah.
that's why they create South Park, you know? Like, and honestly, it was one of the it's amazing. You
Okay,
should watch it
now
on
I know
YouTube.
what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I got it. I think like what I'm hearing is that it comes down to like when you go on the red carpet, there's two ways that you can show up on the red carpet. You can either show up as like this facade that you expect
Right.
everybody to like, or this version of yourself that you think is going to be more accepted, or this, you know, just everything, whether it's like the dress or, you know, or the nice suit, like let's put the boys in it at the
Or
same
even
time.
like, oh yeah, I'm doing fine right now.
Yeah, the facade.
Yeah.
So, like, what I'm getting with this whole Venus aspect is she doesn't have to, like, roll that facade out. She doesn't have to show up to the red carpet in a fucking gown. She can roll up in jeans and a t-shirt and be like, I'm
Yeah,
Venus,
Brittany Murphy.
bitch. I'm Venus.
Or, like, if she
I'm
wants-
fine. I'm confident in exactly who I am and exactly what's going on, and this is me, accept it or not.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Venus is feeling herself.
Yeah.
And when you said
No matter
the
what
whole-
she's wearing.
yeah, like I think her sexy's back. But I was like, you were talking about the superior conjunction point being the farthest away,
Right.
And so
With the full moon,
with the full
which
moon.
is even on the other side of the earth.
Right,
it's-
right.
The
So,
moon
like-
and the earth and Venus, which are the two benefics, are completely the farthest
Right.
away from each other.
So Venus has perspective of herself.
Yeah.
Because she's not like, I feel like personally, I'm like every influence that was like filtering my ability to like see myself I have just been guided to like not isolate, but just like draw my energy back in, call my spirit back, and like not even cocoon. It's like coming in, and then it's like you said the paparazzi thing, and it's so funny because the earlier I had this image of like, it doesn't, you know how like when women walk down the street and like guys cackle at them or something, and then they get like really pissed or offended. It's like a woman who's walking down and she doesn't give a shit who looks at her or what they look at her. Like they're like, look if you want, but like she sees herself.
Because when
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like nothing bothers her, and she's also not like feeding on it. It's just like, you can tell when somebody's carrying themselves like that, when they can like see themselves.
She owns it.
Yeah, and I think Venus is fucking doing that right now.
Dylan, what gene key?
Yeah, Dylan.
What gate is the gene keys is 22 Leo.
22 Leo.
We got to give him the mic.
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know off the top of my head what that gene key is.
So, well, because the other part about this too is Mercury is coming out of its shadow during this full moon, and Mars was there, and now Mercury's kind of having to deliver the message that Mars asked for, because that's what a lot of people don't realize, that there was this rush to identify happiness with Mars, with Mercury, yelling at Mercury like, God darn it, you have to stop. I don't like stopping.
Yeah.
And you have to go backwards back into Cancer. I hate that place. That's the place I hate because that's fall position.
Yeah.
So it's like now Mercury's there being like, okay, this is what I figured out, sir. You know?
Yeah.
It's like the little page to the general, like, here you go. Like, I went there and these were these emotions and there was all these things and all this stuff. And it's like, now it's go time, because it's all happening right at that full moon point. Like, psst, boop, psst.
Yeah.
But I wonder, I wonder what key that was, because I think when we were talking last week, we were talking about where the Sun-Jupiter trines were and all that, and that was this getting out of patterns. And so I think that's what we've all left, is like, we've seen the patterns completely. Because last week we had talked about, what is that key again, Dylan?
Last week it was 7. So it was like how we take patterns for granted as a means to lead ourselves forward, and how when we can actually make the pattern more authentic to our true self, we don't end up being these kind of arrogant, repetitive, ununique leaders. We become the highest expression of our personal leadership, which comes from authenticity, of course. So I think the Mars position right now is the 29th gate, which is the abysmal. So it's where we can fall down really deep into despair and kind of implode into what's not working, or we can pop ourselves back out of that kind of concave position and commit to a yes that takes us on a journey. So a journey of being in love with being in the vessel itself. And when you, speaking of the cup thing, being in love with being in the vessel itself means that as you live and as you go on your journey, you naturally pour that love out into the world, just by surrendering to the experience that you've gone into. So this Mars in the 29 can launch, ships. It can launch journeys. It can give us the fuel that we've needed for so long to actually actualize our liberation, and, kind of like when you pop a joint back into its proper position and then you can move it again. It's like returning to that mobility, I feel like, with Mars in that position. And right now,
or like putting the crown on and owning it, really, because that's where Regulus was, of course, when we were all born, and then it went to Virgo. But
we're approaching.
Yeah, it's like we are approaching this Mars Regulus.
Analogies.
With Mercury square Uranus right now too, I think it's interesting that we were all saying like we've been getting so many downloads, because Mercury Uranus square, I think, is like, is your mind open to receiving the new downloads, or are you obsessing over trying to get a new result out of the same behavior? And I think like we're going after a new result, and maybe that's what I was thinking, is like Mercury square Uranus is this like ramming the intellect into what needs to be new. But if you're walking the same route, thinking that you're going to get to the beautiful destination and like that you want to, I think the key to it is like remaining flexible to what the new pattern might be, and allowing, because Venus is that,
you set the new pattern.
because Venus is harmony, and Venus doesn't necessarily push, she allows. If you allow, instead of like ramming your head into the same old pattern in order to receive what you want to receive, like maybe and like allowing instead, and finding openness into the downloads instead of trying to get the download that you want, like being receptive rather than active, and more going into being led on the journey. And because with Uranus just stationing retrograde as well, it's like you're going to go back into repeating what you think is the new thing to do when it's just giving you the same result. Or are you just going to be open to seeing what the newness could be with no presuppositions, and like going under the red carpet and not caring what the reaction is, or if you're catcalled or it's paparazzi, and just being so in your light that what you need to learn through that comes through without like what others think of. I like a quote that I tell myself a lot, because Virgo sun, like pretty self-conscious. What others think of me is none of my business. What I need to hear is until I hear, it's none of my business. So like staying in the present moment and receiving the electric shock of Mercury square Uranus, or whatever it feels like.
Especially it's in Taurus too, so it's like a very weird space for Uranus, because it's two fixed energies, Leo, Taurus. And so the mind is like, oh, I know how to get there. And Uranus is kind of like in Taurus, like, well, is that really the best way to do that?
Or like, I'm going to perform my intelligence in this certain way to get this certain reaction, where Uranus and Taurus is like, there's not value in performing intelligence. Like Mercury and Leo loves to like perform, but maybe being yourself is the performance that the world needs to see.
Or just the real quality of like the real heart, not the show of the heart, but like the real deeper, valuable, like
the feel
the
rather
creative
than
heart that's like going to create something beautiful, opposed to, oh, I'm just going to get it or something, or I'm just going to like, it's like, no, like you got to just, and it's the moon in Pisces that day sextiling Uranus. So it's almost like, I like how you're saying the allowing. It's like the moon is even saying like, this could be really magical by sometimes showing up and not trying to tell Merlin how to do magic. Like, it's a little bit kind of like, tell me how to do magic, Merlin. Like, I am ready for it. Like, what's the next way to do this? I don't know. So please tell me, and following the magic and how that happens. And then I said tonight, I think that this is one of the most magical periods I've ever seen in astrology in my life. And I think that that's what's so beautiful about it is like magic does exist, but I think if the filling of the cups is like, oh, I'm not going to fill this up. And it's a magical moment that's being filled up into these cups, which it's almost like I imagine this cup and it's like always been water and dirt or whatever, beer or crap or whatever. But this is like this like really, really magical, glittery, like, wow, like this cup is like, you know, whoa, I want it. And it won't ever break in a weird way or seep through because it's like so potent. This is like, remember when we were kids, when you like put those old frozen orange juice things in the 2-liter things, like, you know, it'd be like the whole orange juice, like, and then you would just stir it up, you know, concentrate orange juice back in the day. Like this is like just full concentrate. There's not even that much fluid. That's what's great. So it's like it's fully like concentrated, you know, like instead of it feeling so with Saturn and Pluto barren lately. Like it's been like, oh my God, like, you know, and there's nothing left in the cup.
Yeah.
You're like, like, oh, and there's not even a drop and there's hair in it, but I gotta take it anyway.
Because Saturn Pluto is like it's a gateway. Like Saturn Pluto South Node is like this is a gateway, but we're in the weird limbo of like the old has left, and we're like, oh shit, like what's the new? Like we're terrified because the old has died, and we're like, what do I do next? And I think the creativity of Leo is like, what are you gonna allow yourself to get the download through? Because the paradigm of I need to work hard and struggle to get somewhere, that's just not what we're in anymore. Like what ease and allowing can you rest into to then find your like endless stream of engaging effort to then channel?
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of like how in human design we see that like 70% of people basically are here to respond, you know, here to be.
Love that you're talking about this. I was like, I almost wanted to hear like your perspective on like human design and like generator and like, the manifestor of like what's too intense and pushing too far versus waiting to respond.
Right. And I think because when we really look at history, we're coming to the end of a multi-thousand year process of developing and mastering the mind. And so in that, humanity had to go through a big passage of, you know, the torture of having a mind, and also the destructiveness of having a mind, and the destructiveness that can come when we just act and control and dominate and just do the next thing without that presence, without that consciousness. So I feel like with the Saturn-Pluto energy, South Node coming through, it's like it's culminating that process of, you know, we're fully baked up here. The mind, the story of the mind, done. We're moving to the solar plexus now. And this is where we realize a deeper interconnectedness in life. And this is also where we get like power washed in our solar plexus from all this, you know, thousands of years of stories and strategies and debris and junk DNA and trauma and all this bullshit that keeps us repeating these trauma cycles. Random anecdote, but I saw Lion King last night, finally, the new one. And like I thought it was really fascinating that they showed how Simba basically relived his father's death experience, where he was hanging off the cliff and Scar was there and he was at his whim. And I was like, that's just like what's happening now. We're either getting the memo and kind of letting ourselves slow down enough to listen and respond and come from that aligned place with all that is, or we're so caught up in the intensity of the moment and the intensity of these high voltage transits that, you know, we're right there without even realizing. We're back in that same story. We're back in that like moment of our deepest fear, you know, looking right back at us. Yeah.
As opposed to responding.
Right. And reactionary to me always speaks of coming from the mind, almost like if I'm sitting here listening to you and just trying to think of the next thing I'm going to say, it's not going to be as fluid. It's not going to be as inspired. It's not going to be
like
as
jagged.
connected. Right. It's going to be jagged, aggressive, and kind of awkward.
Right.
But when I truly sit back as my generator self and just wait, literally just wait to see what all of my cells have to say, not just the ones in my brain, then what I'm hearing myself say right now is it's more than just me. You know, it's a echo of all of life, really, just filtered through me.
Yeah, I love that you said that because I feel with the Capricorn energy, these old stories are connected to this feeling of needing some sort of authority that you have to. So it's like, somebody going to college because their parents are telling them that they have to. It's like that story, maybe that child of that long 15, like genealogy lineage, like your 15th great grandfather, they always did this. It's like, I'm not going to go to college. Or it's like, maybe I am going to go to college. Nobody's ever been to college in my life. I'm going to go. Like, it's these moments that are like, I don't have to attach myself to this authority figure anymore, or this way of having to be, because you feel like you need it. Because there's something about Pluto and Capricorn feeling like you need me to write the check, or you need me to get you like where you need to go.
The boss.
Or it's just even just
Yeah.
you need something. It doesn't even have to be a person, a place, or a thing, but there is this kind of, you need this energy in order to.
It came from security.
Yeah.
Familiar discomfort over scary comfort. Like I've just been noticing, like, with my own life and people around me, that they're replaying, like, I think of childhood always as a microcosm of all the accumulated karmic cycle that's gone on. Like, you can look at past lives and they can be interesting, but basically just look at your own childhood, and that's like the microcosm for the lesson that you are replaying out. And there's been like many replays recently of like, are you going to choose a different path than maybe you witnessed or you energetically chose in a soul contract in your childhood, like little experiences where you can either replay that cycle and go into either victimhood or perpetration, or are you going to observe your own reaction and then maybe not even choose something different, but have a different point of view on it, like more compassion, more light is just shed on it, because there's been so many little pockets of, as the old is let out, there's then a mirror for what was the old, and it's just these tiny pockets of microcosm from what your childhood held as your lesson, like rewriting that past story so that you're not acting out of familiar discomfort because you fear that the new comfort might be at too high of a bandwidth for yourself to handle, instead of being like, my computer will upgrade to the processing automatically tonight when it, like, I hit the download.
Right.
Like, it'll do it when it needs to happen, because that can be scary to jump into the new, even if you know it's, because sometimes often, like, the ego and the mind can prefer to be right over feeling good because it thinks that will feel better. Like, it just doesn't make the logic of the mind is not actually logical. So there's up for grabs is like rewriting your story through upgrading.
Well, and that's a good point that you make about like the ego. And it drives me nuts when people are like, kill the ego.
Yeah, it's
like
useful.
you can't actually, well, it's not so much that it's useful, like it can be really negative also, right? But it's more about an integration because it's your inner child.
Loving it.
And it's not just loving it, it's integrating it.
Right.
So yes, you have to love it in order to integrate it. But we're talking about breaking the cycles of like generational patterns, not just you and your parents this time. We're talking about cellular memory that goes back eons and so many generations. That,
North Node Sirius, like this is going to ancient.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, your story, that's great, but are you going to be that cycle breaker that is going to take on literally everybody?
Yeah.
And that's scary. And yet at the same time, on the flip side, it's like, okay, are you stepping into your sovereign self, the outside of these subconscious, like they're deep subconscious programs. And the fear in letting those go has to do with how we identify ourselves with that story and how we identify ourselves with the community that story like creates. Because as humans, we want community, we want relationship. So what it's been so far is, how do we connect more with each other? How do we create relationship? How do we create community? And that's been through family, right? And social settings or whatever. So we've taken on the patterns and the subconscious programs because we wanted to fit into community. And I'm not saying that we're going to disregard that, but to a certain extent, we have to take a step back, realign our sovereign selves of what we want to create, and then realign with a community that is of that same sort of new understanding or new sort of programming, whatever you will. And that's like, I feel like where there's creative yet almost fertility aspect, where
Yeah.
David, you mentioned like, oh, it used to be kind of this like barren energy. One of the cards that I pulled in today's reading had a lot to do with fertility, but that goes to your masculine, or excuse me, that goes to the feminine side of every man and every woman. It doesn't necessarily mean birthing a child. It means what are you going to create now? What are you going to let go of? But then what are you going to take and now like fill yourself up with that own fertility, that you're going to birth something new into the world or into relationships
And actually,
or whatever.
this goes to a question, and I want to go down the list from Serah D'Laine that's
Okay.
connecting with this. We have a viewer who says, it feels like the divine feminine isn't being met, though. The divine masculine seems to be gripping onto the old. They don't want to evolve. And then I want to mix in what somebody else says to that, that somebody then says, men are evolving, women need to evolve too. So there's a lot of people right? So there's a little bit of a
I
battle
talk
there.
a lot about on the masculine
And I know
feminine.
that
Let's dive.
Serah had some notes into this kind of stuff with Mars and Venus and so forth. So we'll start with her and we'll go down the list, and then I'll finish the question on my version at the end.
This Sarah?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, we got so many Serahs today.
Yeah. Before I answer that, can I make
Yeah.
a point real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to make a point real quick on the on a very practical level, like a way because somebody reached out and asked me this question on just identifying fear, like how can we actually like just acknowledge it, like what's that like, and what's the difference between fear and concern. And I think with the ego is here to literally keep you alive. Like literally
Yes.
it is required so that if a car is driving, you will not walk in front of it ignoring the car. Like you are aware that there is a threat in your environment. So one way to know if it's fear guiding you is like, is it trying to keep you safe? Like, is it looking for safety? Is it looking like literally?
But your comfort zone is also safe.
Well, so then that's the next thing is like, also knowing that anything that's unfamiliar is going to be perceived as unsafe because it used to be going into a jungle forest at night, like we talk about this in the shadow work course. Like that's how we are wired. And it's beautiful because we know that, and we have other like consciousness now that we're able to tap into to be like, we can see that. That's what meditation does, right? Like that's Aquarius, like see from a different perspective, like meta perspective. And it might be unfamiliar, but it might be more comfortable.
Yeah.
So just like on a very practical sense, like if you're trying to solve something that's literally either in the future or using the past, that's mind. Like that's left brain, that's ego. It's a pattern. So you can figure it out like one step at a time.
Yeah.
But just like, are you safe right now? Are
Or
we
you
good?
can just reprogram
Okay.
your subconscious, and that works too.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for the
Question.
Yeah, for the question. Okay. My answer comes from my personal experience, which is if it's integrated within yourself, it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing or not doing. And it is obvious for collectively that this is up right now. Like what is happening internally is going to be mirrored externally. And so if you're complaining about feminine not stepping up, where are you not stepping up in your feminine? If you're complaining about men not stepping up, where are you not owning your masculine? And for me, that's where it comes back to the masculine coming into respect for the feminine, and the feminine getting out of the masculine's way in terms of like, we need to learn how to flow with water, but also with the fire. And we got to be able to like let both those channels open and respect each other. And like, if the masculine's ready to move, then we move. And if the feminine's like, wait, I got to tune in, then we respect that. But I think it's like, that's my opinion, is it's internal, all of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with the internality perspective in terms of like if you are noticing around you that there seem to be a lot of situations that involve what you would consider toxic masculinity or toxic femininity, if somehow that's happening in your life. But if that's showing up for you, like it's always a mirror. And so especially as there's a good in the law of one, if anyone's familiar with that, they talk about how as the lightness increases, there's a polarization where the darkness increases too, just simply as a balancing counter until the light can break free. So like we can see it in terms of there's so much greatness, and then there's like some extreme turmoil going on at the same time. So as the divine feminine reintegrates, and I think of the divine feminine as being and the divine masculine as doing. And so personally for me, like this year was like do less and be more. We are human beings. There's needs, like when we even think of increasing the divine feminine, it's still the mode of doing. Like why can't we just let her be instead of making her do what she, because anytime the divine feminine is doing, she's stepping into the masculine basically. So I think the question of, I forgot how it was phrased, but that the divine feminine progressing and then the divine masculine also progressing.
Where is the masculine showing up?
Yeah.
And then another person was like, the men are evolving, but women are too.
Yeah, the way that question is asked gives the projection of like, remember the men? Like when like, that's not really like the rebalancing right now. That's not really the equilibrium point. So I think, and even the binary is kind of in itself kind of loaded. My answer is just there just needs to be more being, and then I think we're seeing that, and because as there's more being, the doing becomes starker and more like, wow, these people are still pushing so hard in a paradigm of I need to conquer and own and display my ownership, and that if we calm down and maybe the voice isn't so loud, then sure, the voices that are loud will be more heard, but we are balancing out, starting from within in ourselves and just the own choice to be more than do.
Like that.
Solid.
Ta-da.
Okay. So in my Reviving Radiance course, I created this blueprint called Mastering Masculine and Feminine Alchemy. For specifically the purpose of like figuring out, okay, where is the balance and what are the shifts, and like how does a woman step into, one versus the other, and what's too much and what's not enough, right? Because we have this dynamic. So I talk about this so much because I'm fascinated with how our culture is shifting on such a powerful level for not just women, but yes, men, right? And so I'll start with one specific example. When I'm doing work with women, what often comes up is their inner feminine has been suppressed since an early age. And so their masculine has become more dominant. And I'll get into specifics on that. But when I then work with men, my initial thought before like doing this blueprint with them, my initial thought was, oh, well, they're going to have then a more suppressed masculine, right? Because the women have a suppressed feminine and the masculine have a, right? I know. And that was totally my assumption, right? And I let that go before working with anybody, and I let flow what showed up, and what showed up was even the men had a certain aspect of their feminine that has been suppressed since they were young. So to me, it's a yin and a yang. Every single person has this yin and yang, and it is the feminine and the masculine within, and it is an equal balance. But we have, based on cultural standards, mind you, we have some qualities that we have deemed more feminine and some qualities that we deemed more masculine, right? Creativity, feminine or masculine?
Feminine.
Drive and ambition, feminine or masculine?
Masculine.
Masculine. And why? I don't know. We don't need to debate that. But the point is that if a woman wants to, like more women right now are wanting to, like they're owning their own businesses. They have drive. And then more women who don't have drive, they want to start their own businesses. And then more men are being called into, okay, it's okay to process your emotions and be more vulnerable, which is technically more feminine.
Yeah. They can emote.
They can emote. And
shocker.
As women, it's up to us to hold space not only for our own inner balance and letting, let me rephrase, releasing the resistance to every element on your masculine and releasing the resistance on every element on your feminine. And the same goes, I feel at least, for men, and releasing that resistance within their inner masculine and feminine. So when you have partners coming together, there's no like, who's supposed to show up as what? It's like, babe, what do you need? I got that energy right now. If you don't, cool. And then maybe the woman is like, cool, all right, I got this energy when like you don't, or whatever. And then you swing back and forth. It's like
harmonize.
It's a harmonize. I like that. Yes. So there's no more of like the 50s, like a woman has to be a woman in this, whatever that looks like. And then a man has to be this way in whatever that looks
Not
like.
cute anymore.
Not
Never
cute
was,
anymore.
but,
Not
like,
fun
really not cute.
anymore.
Yeah.
Like the new, I feel like next level of relationships is like even throwing out alpha.
Yeah.
Because that even is very masculine.
Yeah.
And then that says, oh, now a woman has to be alpha masculine. And then what does that look like? And then what is a
Our
beta
ontology
feminine?
is like based on the ontology of the way that we phrase the words of like what the superior role is like innately. We have to look at the performativity of the words we're even using for this. Yeah.
Because now you have two people being balanced in their own. And one person said this to me too, where they were like, well, wouldn't that take away like the polarity within relationship? Like, wouldn't you be bored then or something? And I was just like, no.
Then it gets to actually be about having fun and trying to like fill the other person's
and being there for each other, like in a true partnership, however that is, whenever that looks like.
It's like a cherry on top, not a like, we gotta bake the cake together. Like we have our
And
own
I'm
cake.
sorry,
It's
I'm
like,
a woman and I want to sit there and bake cakes all day.
Yeah.
Like that's not my jam.
I got a download recently that was like, instead of like you complete me, what about I don't need you? Like we're instead of like on a
But
polarity.
we do. We still need each other. But yes.
Yeah. Like instead of it being a polarity, being like the color wheel where there's like a circle and you can pick on the whole color wheel, like whatever color you want.
And then you're just like, cool, who wants to like color?
I'm like dash D, like whatever, and you're like in that corner doing your thing. Yeah.
So just picking people that like have more access to the colors on their wheel. I like that. And then it's like, cool, well now what are we going to paint?
Yeah. What's our mood board?
That's our mood board. That being said, what do you feel?
Yeah, throw him the mic.
Handle it.
So I'm going to take a departure and kind of come from my
Take a journey.
weird left field. And first off, whether you're a masculine embodiment or a feminine embodiment, I think that trying to be like, hey, they're not doing it right, to the opposite gender, the opposite sex is a great way to trap yourself in victim mentality. So I would stop you right there and I would say, let's look at who you are as a being, not who you are in relationship to someone else. And when we can own that place that we all innately are born to own and to be fiercely joyful with who we are just as we are, I think that then it doesn't really matter what's going on in the hubbub of the spiritual community or who's not evolving or who's evolving faster. It's more just about own your field, own your consciousness, and show up in the ways that you need to for yourself, for your work, for your spiritual work, for your evolution. And everything else will come to you, everything else you need. And these confusing dialogues that ultimately just separate us and give us more reasons to have these, overt opinions that just polarize in not a way that unifies, in a way that just creates online drama and just blabbity blah blah blah. It's like, let's just zero into our truth. Let's zero into our consciousness and understand that when we're in alignment, everything that's perfectly ready for us shows right up. And when we're too busy up here in other people's business, then we're in separation, we're in darkness, and we're being a hypocrite. So that's my 2 cents.
That's a solid.
There's a lot there to come after that one. One is, I think, Saturn, Pluto, and Libra that's finishing over the last 35 years has been the ultimate unbalancing act to understand the true consciousness of the balance of the yin and yang. We've had to see it go through the unbalanced part to understand what the balance is. So one is not getting so reactive or mad of seeing this unbalancing act to then know how to balance it. If the boat is tilting one way or the other, you don't freak out. You find a way to rebalance the boat out, and you don't freak out because you're going to sink the boat. So there's that aspect, and I think that with Mars and Venus that will meet in Virgo here, and both cross over Regulus in Virgo, which is a service-oriented, the masculine and the feminine have to find what their service roles are, because there is the there's the genetic understanding of a masculine and feminine, right? So there is that that you can't deny as well, right? But understanding the service roles of each other, and there is no defining of what is the right service of the masculine and the feminine. It's just how is it going to serve for the best and come together? Because right now, Mars and Venus are going to come together in the space of service, and Regulus in Virgo is no more Leo. It's no more of these higher up energies that have the crown or have the three-tiered tiara telling people how the masculine and the feminine should be. This is common people creating what the world's going to look like now. And so we've never seen that before because it has been masculinized by the old church. Like, let's just be honest. That's what it was. Women were just only nuns and just go clean up the fucking mess and just go help that sick person. And I'm going to sit up here on my fucking throne and do whatever the fuck I want and write the Bible however I want to write it. You know what I mean? And make sure that women get this way. Even Adam, like this whole entire story was just about connecting of really the truth is that Eve's understanding of going for the fruit was giving consciousness to the masculine, which actually they demonized because they just wanted people to be asleep. Right? So if you look up at the universe, right, it's dark. This feminine is holding the whole universe together. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that our perception of what even the masculine archetype looks like is deeply conditioned by basically this Saturnian patriarchal view. I think that the soul of the masculine is a lot more, if you think of a flame, it's ever changing, it's growing, it's shrinking, it's doing all kinds of things. But it's not necessarily like this hard regulatory, just like, it's more, I see the masculine as more of like this vital exploratory force rather than this like need to clamp down and organize and just like be so, Saturnian. And I think maybe behind, once this transit has really completed, we might see a reawakening of a new definition of the masculine that's more organic, that's more from nature rather than from the mind of the masculine that dominated the earth through, this era that we've been living through.
I liked what you said, just in terms of like you can just kind of cut the crap and just focus on yourself, like instead of like trying to use the mind to figure it out, like that's still the mode that is based in separation. So the unity might just be with this upcoming like pretty extreme Virgo season of so many planets in Virgo. I think of micro decisions and like what micro decisions can you make on a daily basis to honor yourself, because the more that you focus on the dichotomy or the imbalance, the less that you're focusing on like what you can actually do to solve things in your own world, which then makes like this upcoming season, maybe think with the questions about how to balance and all, maybe kind of throw them out the window and be like, what small decisions on a daily basis can I do to honor myself? And I don't really care where I fall on the binary, on the spectrum or whatever. Like, I'm just finding my equilibrium. And as we all do, it will all like find perfect clarity.
Yeah, and in Carl Jung, he brings the shadow of the masculine and the shadow of the feminine, which actually the shadow of the masculine is like the feminine of like men, like, crying in their room and like, like, I can't do this, I'm going to lose or I'm not going to do well. And the feminine's dark shadow is actually being masculine, believe it or not. Like, it's actually trying to be out there and be like, no, ha, la, la, la. And then it's like, that's where it feels a little,
it's very angry.
And then the masculine, it feels very like, oh, like you're, whatever. But I think that maybe this shadow had to be played out for us to understand how to all understand what it even is in itself. So it's like you can't get mad at it. You can't get mad at, over toxicity of masculine. You can't get mad at over, feminist, because you what you're doing is then you're playing into the shadow. You're not actually playing into the real feminine or the real masculine that it actually is.
Yeah. But we're in a beautiful place of rewriting that. Like, I mean, if anybody is angry about it, it's like, but step us back a second and look at like the beautiful unfolding that is taking place within each individual. And because it's taking place within each individual, that's what's rippling out as a collective. I think it always comes down to like finding the intention and the purpose, whether it's for yourself or within a relationship. Because now it's like, okay, what is that balance? Like, what's going to be that center line of the yin and the yang? Like, that's purpose.
Maybe it's Juno, which is
what
this
is that?
unique thing happening in between
Leo
Mars
right
and
now.
Venus right
There's
now.
something in between. Like
There's
it's that line
yes.
that's
Yeah.
in between the yin and the
And
yang.
Juno is that like wanting to complement a partner perfectly, kind of like that, or not in terms of like, oh, you complete me like my other half, but more like where can I show up in a partnership in order to best serve myself through mirroring me and another? Like, how can I embody myself so clearly that the mirror that shows up with another person is what I want to see in the mirror? And so that's a good point with Juno, that like that being there right now is this way of seeing that being in a partnership doesn't have to be, I need to find like, if I need to fill my divine feminine, I need to be this divine masculine or feminine. Like it's just simply seeing how you can serve yourself the best and relating back to yourself in order to then see that mirrored back to you in a partner, because it's always that mirror. And I mean, we did like like the universe separated into fractals of us to understand itself as it came back together again. So being upset over the separation is kind of like, I mean, we could just like figure it out on our own level instead of obsessing over how we can piece together this puzzle that is coming together so beautifully if we had that macro view.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a piece. What do you mean as a separate or as a piece of separation?
I mean how like we are all connected in oneness, but we're oneness
Yeah.
experiencing ourselves through the fractals of individualization.
Oh, okay, I get what you mean. Yeah, but that's gonna happen because we live in duality anyway. Like that's never gonna change.
Right. But it just saying in terms of maybe a different perspective of, instead of like finding that to be an issue, more
Yeah.
seeing like, okay, that's the process of understanding unity through the eyes of the universe itself.
Like getting back to your
right.
yin and yang.
In Earth school.
Yeah, it'd be like going from your death and then replaying the whole story back to your birth and back into the womb, like that guy, whatever. He played,
the movie?
He played the guy from Tesla. I remember that video recently.
No.
I sent to you, Sarah.
Maybe.
Remember, he's like, "Oh yeah, so we were playing with the time travel, and then we accidentally fucked up. So you're gonna actually experience yourself get younger, and then you're gonna end up getting back into your mother's womb, and then it's gonna be
then
very
there's some
weird, and then you're gonna end up
quantum field that you're
flying
gonna,
back
like-
into your the penis of your father,
Yeah.
and then
Who
into
was
the
he,
sperm.
like, being,
He was
though?
being what's his name? Elon Musk.
Oh, okay, got
Yeah,
it.
but I'm just saying
it
that
was so
the way
weird.
that Maren's describing it is like take it from the
Yeah.
going backwards of back to
Yeah.
your birth in a weird way. Like that would be a weird way of understanding it all. You know what I mean?
Dude, this is weird, but I gotta
Regression.
do it. Full
Yeah.
transparency. I also had this vision in my Reiki session. I went back
This
to
is a
like
Reiki
birth
session.
canal.
Yeah.
And when her hands were, I felt like I was like coming through, and what I saw, this is so weird, but like in that moment when the baby's being born, the mother is pushing, like during contraction, like
Yeah.
that's like the push is coming from there, the action, the yang, and the baby, I felt like I was also pushing, and then, but we were both pushing, and what needed to happen was I needed to relax, and I needed to surrender so that like I could just like move out. but like the whole point is like we don't need to push on all cylinders from all times, and like there's this balance or this harmony of like surrender, like
Yeah.
moving, Dylan, like what we were talking about
But
last
that's
week
masculine,
with
feminine.
the water and the flow, the current, and
Yeah.
how it's like you can just like get off on this current, or you can like navigate the water and keep going. You know what I mean? Like you can like so I think surrendering with that flow, like
Having a structure, I feel like, is masculine, and then
Yeah.
having the flow is the feminine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I brought up a lot
did
about
you
alien babies weeks ago because I was saying that maybe
We're
this
segueing.
allowing process that you describe, I think it's so beautiful, and especially like, I mean, I don't know, maybe in the future, maybe men have babies and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie, but I don't know. But I am trying to say that I could understand if I tap into my divine feminine of understanding of like, yeah, there is a moment of like, where they say as a woman, it's like, there's this moment where it becomes so intense and then you release, the baby releases just this harmonic, perfect release point of both energies at the same time releasing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was bringing up the alien baby because it's almost like if we're not in that space, the way that alien babies come out is they rip themselves out of the womb themselves, okay?
Okay.
I didn't know this.
On The Sims, that does happen. There's like a ceremony of animation, and like they just kind of
So
like
you get
yeah.
to choose in that moment if you're gonna be
Like it's against nature in a weird way.
But that's,
like
and that's
like,
a bigger thing is like
hijacks.
our relationship
Yeah, it
with
hijacks.
the greater mother is like right now, like where are we fighting ourselves
Yeah.
and where are we fighting life and like surrender and let it push you because
Yeah.
everything feels so fucking faded and beautiful
Yeah.
in this way that's like stop resisting this rebirth. This fucking
because then you're
You'll
in
be an
control
alien.
like an alien baby that's going to take that over and then come in and then it's going to birth itself when it wants and come out however it wants and then it's going after the next thing to take it over and that's a little bit parasitic, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how parasites work.
Yeah,
That's
it's
fear.
one of the ways. So basically, we're all birthing alien.
No, I'm no.
No.
I'm saying that if you are not right now in alignment with this new birth, which I love that I think is the greatest analogy of all these apex points, this full moon, everything, Venus, all this, like there's this beautiful new birth moment here that's in alignment with that ownership of that ultimate truth and that ultimate heart and whatever feels like a crazy old pattern, whatever is from the mind that has just been completely fucking us up the whole time and is not from this new solar plexus place, but that is an intuitive understanding and knowing that you don't need the mind anymore because you know, it's just like an internal knowing that you know that this is what you must do to birth in the most surrendered, most beautiful acceptance of the life instead of the death. It's like, I love that thing that you got in your Reiki session today. that is, if you do not go that route, then alien babies are like, well, I know I shouldn't go back to my ex who fucked over me and did this. And you know what? It's like you're going to go in there and then you're, and then alien baby,
or just being the new life.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is that it's like it's counteracting what is natural because if this is like the law of like just natural order, I think that we're in with all these planets and dignity, there is a natural order to things in the universe. And if you look up at the masculine and the feminine in the universe, it is perfectly working all the time. If you watch it in nature, it is perfectly working all the time. The
us
pollen
fucking
is
with it that
attracting the
makes
bee,
it
the bee is
problematic.
coming to it, it's doing its thing, it's just all normal.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it's flipping out, but you know what? Maybe it is. Bee populations have gone down. We're seeing.
That's because of electromagnetic frequencies.
But what if you were to think if we are reflecting ourselves and we are seeing the same reflections everywhere? Right now, the squabble between humans is about masculine and feminine and what to do. What if that is causing nature to question its own identification roles too?
very well be. It's
I'm
a
just
valid
bringing
point.
up an open conversation. I'm not saying I think that's true, but that might be an interesting quality. If everybody's shifting masculine, feminine, and the roles and what it is, what is nature going to do in these lower dimensional aspects? Because we are conscious beings that are being able to see this, right? So what happens to the world around us in that space? What if the flowers start being like, well, what? I don't create pollen anymore or whatever. And then, wait, what? And then like the bees are like, well, I'm not supposed to go after pollen or what?
Like what?
And-
There won't be a queen bee anymore.
What if that? Yeah. What if it's a male bee?
I mean,
Also, though, when people, this can also
I'm
happen.
not saying. I'm just saying that it's an interesting look. I'm not saying
yeah,
that's
yeah.
true.
I think too, like with the Jupiter-Uranus switch, it's like switch over, you know, like Jupiter direct
yeah.
with Uranus retrograde. I also think that what's happening is people are coming together in this way that's activating their environment, and shit is like, it's so Uranian right now. It would be so easy to mentally label shit as like, that's not good. That's a bad sign. But actually, it's like the more in alignment you're getting, the faster shit's moving. And it's moving at such a level that like these random things are like, these like doors are closing, but like sometimes there's like a finger in the door, but it's like trust, just like, I don't know, it's just like this ultimate trust right now that it is like all perfect and it's all just trust. Even if it looks weird, if you're coming together, that's what's happening. Even if it looks like things are falling apart, it's coming together. Like that feels so clear right now.
Well, I would rebuttal a little bit to say that everything always comes together, whether it's a terrible downfall or the beautiful upcoming of something. Michael Luton, and I always quote, said something great with Uranus. You know, it's like whenever you expect the worst, Uranus will not give you the worst, because it's always something unpredictable, like the Epstein thing this weekend, right? Uranus was stationing. We had this moment, and then out of nowhere, it's just like Epstein killed himself in his jail cell on suicide watch. That is the last thing that we all were thinking in our lives. It was not, though that is very Uranus switching gears, right? So it's the last thing that you think it's ever going to be. Like Uranus always pops up like a jack in the box of what you were not expecting at all. It would never cross your mind, crossed your mind. So it's whatever is trying to cross your mind that you think it is, it won't be at all usually.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Like if we go into it, it is coming together, but there is this point where we actually don't know. All we can do is follow the true feeling that feels right in ourselves, that feels aligned with the divine nature of ourselves, the universe. And if there is any feeling that is weird, that actually feels like, you know what, it's too old patterny, or it's the same thing over again, and it's got resistance because, you know, you can know that. I mean, I don't know, maybe because in my life I just am subconscious 12th house.
Yeah.
I know when I'm going down an old pattern and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to do that anymore.
I think we're like we're being able to see timelines. We're able to, like, when we think of choices, we're able to see, oh wow, that's the timeline that's taking place. And if you have a gut feeling about a timeline, that's your future self like shuddering that you chose that. So like trust that gut feeling that you are literally like looking into the timeline that's going forward. And if it doesn't feel exactly aligned, if you're not choosing ease, then that is that future self that is like shuddering that you're considering that. Like you don't want to choose that timeline. And we're going into a time where there was at one point like the paradigm of having to go through the difficult timeline to come out on the other side as like a winner. But like literally now we can choose the timeline of ease and harmony and unification, and we don't have to go through the shit. Like you can just choose what feels good and not have the future self like shuddering it. Like, why did you choose that? Like just pick what feels best.
I want to say that it was years ago when I did Rising Through the Darkness in this period, and the big thing that I always was looking at was Neptune in its home sign of Pisces with Saturn in its home sign of Capricorn in the sextile, because we've never seen that in our lives, and that is amazing. I call it the spiritual quest of all quests. And there's something about this turning point coming into 2020 that it's ironic to me that when we came into 2000, I remember being like, oh my God, 2000. I remember 2010 even being like, oh my gosh, but you notice nobody's talking about like, oh my God, we're coming into 2020. Like we've kind of lost this idea of the time. But then there's something.
Time itself is changing.
Time itself is changing. But there's another part to this where there is something about like in the consciousness of the collective of like, whether Christians believe it's this second coming or it's the idea of left behind, there is also in the conscious community that of like you're going to ascend to this great big place or not kind of energy, right? So there's that playing out in all religions and all spiritual forms right now. And I believe that there really is this just what I don't think it's is defined as, because all that is coming from a lot of human mind stuff that is ending, that I just think it is about just knowing and aligning with this pure universal consciousness that you just know, and you know that there is no missing the boat of the predetermination of a lot of things, but I believe that it is the ultimate understanding of free will we've never experienced as a being before. That's what's coming, and that's what's feeling so weird right now is the predetermined lines are coming to their kind of end roads. And I think that's what's scary to a being that has been in a movie that has been preset forever. And I think this goes to the very beginning of the whole conversation with Dylan saying like, they're watching us, what are they going to do? Because I think for the first time, they're kind of like, let's release the gate, see what happens.
Yeah.
And it really has energetically felt like a free for all, at least for the last 2 or 3 days. Through the Lionsgate portal, I feel like, it was just like, let the dogs out, release the hounds. All the angels and the demons were just flying everywhere. And it was kind of like, okay, let's have some fun with this. Let's make this interesting down on Earth. So I echo that.
It's like a reality show that all of a sudden needs like drama. Okay, we need drama. Somebody make something happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I had an image like as well of like a few days ago of like extra dimensional people that are like watching us in like they're like making bets on like who's gonna win a fight or like a race, and they're like laughing that like, oh, I think like this group of like humans is gonna pin out. Oh, they chose that. Oh, okay, like no, we're gonna bet on this choice now, and like laughing at us in our what seems like grave situations that they're like. It's just like us playing to figure out what timeline feels best, and a period of experimentation when we're getting like this higher sensitivity and bandwidth to process more information and seeing, oh, how am I going to use this new technology? Like, how am I going to figure out how to play with this? Oh, am I going to pick the option on this computer game that's like so stupid, and then some extra fifth dimensional like Palladian's going to lose money on me? Like that kind of like, and we're the little like players in the game, but we don't know that, and that makes it like a good reality TV show or something.
No, I love that perspective, because it's really what I think is the end of like extreme predetermination, which we have lived in for so long, just mathematically. And I always come back to astrology and math. Saturn, Pluto, South Node. Sorry, that's not normal. That's not, go do your charts, people. It doesn't happen. So that is the end of time itself, and that is also the end of why we feel like the world is coming to an end. And the Mayans were right, because ever since 2012 and December 21st, you could feel this weird energy come. Of course, it's not going to be as we think in dramatic fashion as a human. Like, it's coming to an end now, like right now, like bam, like it's over. It's like there's this slow, steady, and of course it would be all the Scorpio energy that came through in all those years. And then of course it would come to this point, to the 2020s, of this Aquarian stuff that's going to start to come. And we are moving to these last 3 signs of the zodiac with all this intense energy,
Yeah.
you know, and it's very, very intense. And it's very, in a mirrored way, like, yeah, I think that they're bored up there. And I think also that they're building a new universe. And I think that they are also giving, who's got the driver's license? Who can we give a driver's license to put into this new universe to actually see what a true free will universe will be like? Where I feel like it was tried as a free will universe, but a lot of people took control and a lot of people created control systems. And I think that's what's ending, is that we want to find and now I'm going to be honest, this is me channeling from my future life, and why I came back here was I was an assistant to an architect of the universe at the table. And they were all leaving to go work on the new universe. And right now it's like they've said it, but now they need to know who the new players are. And they don't want to bring in players with permits anymore. You know, they want to bring in people with driver's licenses.
Like
you
the
know what I
commercial
mean?
driver's license,
Yeah,
where they can do like the real, yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. And I think Dolores Cannon was right about this splitting of the earth.
Yeah, it only makes sense.
And I believe that we are feeling it really intensely. I mean, even look at the flat earth debate to the round earth debate. She is dead on the money with all this stuff. And that's what's not scary. I think it's beautiful that it's like there is a splitting of the earth, and it's like, and it comes to the masculine, feminine thing of like, it's okay if it's playing its role that way, or if that earth wants to go that way. And those people, there's nothing right or wrong with which earths are splitting. Some people might want to be in a more predetermined reality and replay the old tape again because that's safer. Or maybe that's just, maybe they are not done with figuring that one out. But there are a lot of souls down here who are excited for this new universe and to actually have free will. Like, because if you actually look at the term of free will, like free will is free will, like all the way. And if you look at this reality, there is a lot of things that don't allow full free will.
Yeah, total free will can be almost like scary because that means that everything is random in a sense. Like there's literally no past conditioning, and some of the past conditioning could be good. Like I know that I like this kind of food better than this kind of food, so that means that my decision isn't totally free will because I have the security of knowing it. And so total free will takes, jumping into 5D takes courageousness of trusting source and trusting impulse in the moment. So every time you follow your intuition, it's like you are choosing the 5D timeline that will then create the 5D new earth when collectively that like 51% moves on to that basically. So it's like scary, even though we objectively kind of want to get there eventually in that new freedom. Like right now, coming from our 3D consciousness of still having some kind of matrix programming to keep us a little safe, that's like, wow, like free will really would mean that there's like nothing holding me together. Like there's no past programming, no like likes and dislikes. It's just like pure source in moment, like being
no
here
positive,
now.
negative, no masculine,
Yeah.
feminine either, in a weird way.
Yeah, it's just,
Like,
But
and
then
that's-
it just becomes choice that matter.
it comes full choice all the time in the moment. Like there is no time either of past or present. There is only the moment.
you can stretch time. Like
Yeah.
it's like malleable. And I think we forget that even though our 3D thing, like we live in 3D linear time, but in a lot of other dimensions and whatnot, like time is stretchable, malleable, it's foldable and whatnot.
Time
and
is layering upon itself.
Yeah, it's
This
it's
is
not
like
it's not
the-
a
We
can't
ongoing,
understand
it's like
it.
it's a layer. It's like a, and then it recirculates on itself.
in
But-
this mind, we can't
But
comprehend.
what I wanted to touch on is like we're talking about all this stuff of like, okay, something's ending and something's cycling out and all that stuff. And like, I always look at it, I feel like everybody does the same thing, that it's like the macro and the micro. It's the as above, so below. It's the as within, so without. So anything that's happening outside of us, whether it's time, whether it's something ending, whether it's like, what I see is it's bringing more of our shadow side into the light, and what's truly ending is our shadow. That's what the ending is. That's like, you're coming more into an awareness. So it's not really an ending as much as it is a cycle out into then, I mean, you could call it a new beginning.
The ignorance is turning into awareness, like the ignorance of darkness.
Yeah, you could say it. You could say it 1,000 different ways. You could say it as, you know, you could say it as, okay, and we have more planetary, you know, influence coming in, and so that's bringing more awareness. And so, what does that bring for us? Like, it's not I don't see it as an ending. I see it as a trend.
Yeah.
It's a birthing, but that even says something new. But it's like if time is really layered upon itself and it keeps recycling, then we're really just going back to an original. It's not something that's ending. It's like I don't know if I'm explaining it right.
It's non-linear, so it's just simply a recalibration or like a new conglomeration of the same little facets.
And as something recalibrates, it also expands. So as our consciousness is expanding, we're also helping to expand the universe. And as the universe continues expanding, then it's cycling around again at a different level.
Right, and we see that with how the
sense?
galaxy works and how there's repeating patterns. But I almost feel like it's like if you fall asleep and you were to wake up, you would be in that new space and just be in there, like how a dream
that's what
is
I mean
in
is
many ways.
this,
like that would be the transition.
But
it would
that's
be
another
that simple. You wouldn't even actually know the transition happened. I think
the momentum subsides.
But that's a different,
like how you didn't know how you just showed up here, like in a weird way. You have to kind of in this place do
You're
the
like
backwards
timeline jumping.
figuring out thing, right?
Yeah, but
We'd
okay,
almost-
so if you're taking, let's say, dream state, your dream is also your subconscious reality,
right,
versus the waking reality. So that could be
True.
seen as then your shadow side versus your light side. That could be seen as past versus future. So everything is
But I
relative.
think that
So
the dream
splitting
state
of the
can
worlds.
change too.
The what?
I think the dream state can be more than just the subconscious.
Oh no,
mind.
it's a full
Yeah.
open portal to different
I think that's the
dimensional
beginning
realities.
stages, and a lot of people don't get past that.
If you know
But
how
I
to,
think that once you
yeah.
understand and grip that, you can use the dream state to start to go into these nonlinear timelines and do other work, or
Correct.
or go back home. Go
But-
back home.
Exactly.
To the real self. Maybe this is our shadow self down here. Bless you.
Exactly. But now if we're talking about like the splitting of two different worlds, it's not a splitting of different worlds. It's an awareness. Like 5D isn't a fucking destination. It's
That
not
makes
somewhere
sense.
that you
and
go.
I think you're
It's
right.
a state of being.
If it
It's a
would be
consciousness.
splitting, then you're right. Then it would still be connected to it in a weird way.
Exactly.
So yeah, maybe Dolores Cannon had a good way of, in the old way of
It's an
thinking.
analogy.
And a great analogy of it. But I think you are correct in the state that if it really is that state, it would just be, and it would almost be like, I don't know. It's like the OA, you know, like how that was, and how the beauty of like being able to connect to this kind of like new, you know, dimensional life and new role of where you're at, but still that has the dimensions of understanding this control system in a weird way.
Like the house.
Right.
That had all the different rooms
Yeah.
in it. Like
yeah,
that.
or even how that, and I can't believe it's not going to get re-upped. I got really upset.
not?
when-
That's
no.
so bogus.
I never saw it,
You know
but I know
why?
it's not.
I think that they don't want people seeing that movie because of what we're seeing,
yeah.
we're talking about right now.
Yeah, because the
But
connection
that's
that
the
show.
reason why it
too much.
so should. But they're also talking about like near-death.
But the near death was just a way. I think we've all that have been spiritually. I think we've all had a near death experience that are very aware and conscious. But death is described in different ways, whether it was a physical death or whether it was a spiritual death in a very
But I've
traumatic
also had
experience.
a near-death experience. So it's,
Yeah.
there's like a phoenix death, and then there's like a whole other thing. But you don't have to have a near-death experience in
Yeah.
order to have that awakening.
Right, yeah.
That's, I feel like, what most people.
I feel like for some people that's just God's way, or like some people
That just
drugs was their way of like doing it, or for
That-
some people's ways
that
it
was mine.
was going into a Buddhist temple at a young age and going in that route. Like there's like a lot of different ways.
Totally. I was just
Yeah.
very stubborn. So Spirit's like, here you go.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
just knock you upside the head and almost kill you so that then you can wake up to a new. And that, so if we're talking about a different reality, waking up that next morning, it felt like I was in a different reality. But I know now that that's because there was an inner energetic and thus then conscious shift within myself, and then how I was relating to my external reality. But we set the tone within, and everything outside of us is the echo. So whatever's happening here, that's what's going to show up outside.
Yes.
So it wasn't like like you relate to people differently, but it wasn't a split world where all of a sudden those people that I knew then disappeared from my life. I just didn't relate to them in the same way because my energetic structure and consciousness was different.
Yeah.
The resonance won't latch.
Exactly. So it's literally a frequency thing. And if we know everything is vibration, everything is frequency, you either match at the same vibe or it's just like opposite, and then you just kind of bypass each other.
Well, then maybe
which would be like
that's
two different
what
worlds.
this. We can't say new, we can't say old, but like this transition is the frequencies that are aligning are aligning, the
Yeah.
ones that aren't, and like on the radio stations, right? If you just
Yes.
go on
You
a
can see the polarization,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the polarization of like extreme darkness and extreme light. Like maybe that. I mean, I don't claim to know, but maybe that is what we talk about when we say like there'll be a splitting of Earth timelines. It's kind of like which do you want to choose to be on? Not kind of like is.
I also feel on like I think really important like grounded level. The way that this is also showing up is like this Saturn-Pluto South Node thing, and this 2020 is like, yes, before this cycle ends and begins again, like before, like we are being pushed to evolve, like as a species. Like that's what this is. This is a new evolution that we've never reached or had before. It's like the balsamic moon phase. It's like the culmination of the entire thing is coming up. And so we're also in the darkest part of that cycle where like, what are we going to do now? And in order to like do it differently. So it's also like the 5D thing and all this language on a very like fundamental level as well. And I think this comes back to the masculine and feminine is like how we're relating to people and like, are we seeing people's innocence? Are we able to literally stop judging people, stop causing harm, stop
season
feeding
lesson of
violence,
innocence.
and I watched this movie on Netflix called The Imitation Game. I think that's what it's called. About the Enigma thing.
Yeah.
And there's this one quote that he brought up where he talks about the problem with violence is that it feels good. And sometimes we can't do what feels good. We have to do what's logical. And I feel like that's this Aquarius full moon too, is like this logical ability to like step outside of stuff and be like, I might be triggered, but like for fuck's sake, like I'm not gonna go there again. Like I have the capacity to connect, to make that connection to a higher mind, to make that conscious decision, and I'm going to use it. Like not just to like please whatever pain point needs to be pleased right now, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think it's,
Yeah, because like we can't have revolution for revolution's sake. It has to be guided by values that honor our spiritual potential or just our spirit in general. And that's actually the gate that this moon is going to be in human design, is the 49th gate, which is in the solar plexus. And it's where we have our relationship to resources and tribe and money and like food, but as an expression of spirit. And when the values that we carry around those things, around how we deal with each other and how we relate to our resources, when those no longer serve, then it's time for a revolution. So it's in that we are going to be clearing a lot of these old patriarchal ways of dealing with resources, I feel too. And that's going to cause even greater shifts, especially with Uranus and Taurus retrograde. It's like we're going to change our relationship to the food we eat as we become more spiritual beings. And we're seeing movements around that, but I think it's going to become even deeper and more visceral for us, why we can't keep making these same choices anymore. It's not something that's even going to be a matter of black or white, right or wrong, left or right. It's going to be more like, I feel so much what pain this inflicts on all of our consciousness that I can't do it anymore.
Right.
And so that's when
or it just won't be sustainable, and it's like the universe is forcing it.
Right.
Well, that's
exactly.
This is what it's
that's
gonna
like,
be.
are we going to learn through ease, or are we going to learn through being forced? Are we going to, it's like someone can have a spiritual awakening because they're like about to like die, or someone can have a spiritual awakening because they choose to read like an influential book or something. So like, are we going to choose to learn through being stubborn, or are we going to learn through the logic of like feel logic, not mind logic? It's like observational logic of I know I need to learn, so I might as well make the decision that is on the timeline of my highest good, even if in this moment I want to choose something that's an unsustainable option that I know is, hurting everyone. Even if your small self is still in the pattern, in the paradigm of feeding into that, maybe you choose what feels good on a collective level. And this Aquarius full moon, again, is like, what service can I have to everyone? Because that will feel best in myself in the long term, not doing the instant gratification.
Like it's a proactive approach.
Yeah.
As opposed to a reactionary approach.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is where it becomes really funky with this full moon in Aquarius, with this Leo, is because we all have our unique frequencies. And so everybody's really trying to find a similar frequency to be on, but it's almost like everybody is going to be off on some frequency somewhere. So maybe on the food level, yeah, everybody's on some frequency, but some other people will not. But then other people that might be on that frequency of the food might not be on a total other frequency that's on another. So I love what Serah said about the judgment, like that cannot be had at this point, because anybody judging anybody at this point is going to realize that in every frequency level, everybody's going to be off a little bit on the whole entire spectrum.
We're all climbing a
Yeah.
spiritual ladder, but the rungs are not linear. Like we're all on that
Yeah.
path, but it's not like a literal ladder. Like we are reaching each little, we're
Yeah.
assembling, we're pulling out like the Jenga block in like different locations at a time. Like no one's is the same.
Exactly. So it's like that's how we come together, is like, so somebody might be on this
That was a good
frequency
one.
of something that another person might not be on, and maybe that's where this divine masculine and feminine work together, of like how Serah said, I got this, you got this. Here, I'll help you transition here. I won't judge you. We're helping you get on this, but also like I know that you're on this frequency that I'm not on, that I
Yeah.
need to be on. Like there's this kind of healthy exchange, I think, that will go. And I think that because there's so much potent, great relationship energy, if you come in with judgment with this Saturn, Pluto, Libra thing that happened in 82 and 83, and it is completing here in 5 months, you will fail this test of the ultimate relation. I think that the ultimate relationships are happening in this next 5-week period. That is the ultimate test of what the whole last 37 years of relationships have been about. And then when you add these other long-term timelines, they're all converging at this point. There is something about how relationship itself, to whether it's the earth, to our relationships in person, to ourself, to everything, is the understanding completely of what to pass through this portal with.
And the another way to like think of this is, it was coming to me like, just function higher, just function at a higher level, and everyone around you, like let them meet you at that like teach them through functioning higher.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is, I think, integrated divine masculine too, because it's divine masculine it is objective, it is neutral, it's like it's clear, it's just like it's decisive, that's it, like it's objective.
That's hot.
And yeah, it's super hot. It's super hot, and so it's like grounded in that way. So I think it's like, just own your shit. Like I've been feeling like, I mean, and I know Saturn's on my sun, so that has an influence. But it's like it's just time to grow up.
Yeah.
Like it's just time to like.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the feminine teaching, because I look at the masculine as the sun and the moon feminine, right? It's very simple. Like the masculine kind of, it does move, but it's like a different movement, right? Like so, but it's like just kind of there, whereas the moon has different shades. It has different apex points. It has all these really intense aspects. That's how the feminine is, experiencing in a whole different way, and knows the different colors of it all, that it can teach the masculine that's kind of standing there in this one space
Yes.
of how I've already been through all these shades. I've already felt this way. Like,
Yes.
but then the moon has to help
Has
the
to inform.
masculine,
Has to plant him.
inform and let that naturally happen in its own way. It's going to be
Yes.
decisive. It will be, but it also at the same time has a statured form of like, it's kind of like the sun being like, oh, I need to start bringing light over to this solar system too. Okay, I know I need to do that, but I still have this one. I'm not going to just pull out completely out of the whole fucking thing and kill all these planets and then just go over there.
And
There's
just do
this
it all
kind of
myself
like
either.
yeah, and do it all
Like-
myself. Like I'm gonna reach my arm out. I'm gonna start putting some light there. Don't start yelling at me about it. I'm doing it, but give me a moment to do this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you know, like, because I think that's where there was a woman's question of like, I don't see the masculine showing up. It's like, I'm sorry that there are a lot of masculine that aren't showing up. I even say the same thing, because being a man and being in this world is very lonely with the guy friends. You know what I mean?
I feel like right now the
You guys have no idea. At least the
like-
women, it's like, yeah, oh yeah. And it's like, guys are like, what the fuck you talking about, dude?
Yeah.
Well,
There are
I
a lot
also
of
feel
men's
like
groups, though. There's a lot.
Yeah, but then that feels like more
force.
feminine. Men's groups.
It's not. No, it's not.
It feels very
Well, you
the
know what?
old
I
like
don't
let's
know.
go. Yeah, but
I
you
don't
want to
know.
come.
I haven't been
You
in
want to
one.
go to a
I'm
men's
not
group? Why don't we go down to the fucking Mason?
Let's go to a
Let's go down to a Mason meeting. You want to go down to a Mason meeting?
No.
Well,
But this is like, okay, wait, for real though, this is so important because relationships, this is collectively and personally, like, this is what the focus is. So I was thinking of the sun and the moon today, and I was like, just like the sun and the moon, it goes through phases. Every month it goes through this cyclical relationship. Like, the new relationship paradigm, we need to be okay with like everything going through phases. And then I love how you brought up the moon being the feminine. It's been like, I've been through this so many cycles. And like, this is the integration point, I think, is like the masculine is like, wow, you've done this so many times. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm really terrified and I'm trying so hard. Maybe I'll just ask you to help me and just ask you to like give me a perspective that
The masculine gets its consciousness through the feminine.
Right, and the feminine need to be willing to give it, and we need to be willing to give
Correct.
it. So that's
why Adam and Eve. That's why Eve is castrated. That's why Eve is castrated, and even deeper in space. All that darkness is the feminine holding it all together, which allows that masculine, if it's a sun, let's say, to understand that it's even a sun. That's consciousness. Without that, and that feminine holding it together, and the mother holding it together, or the mother birthing the child, like, there is no understanding. Like, so that's
You wouldn't
where
have life without.
That's why the moon is the conscious bringer of a new moon or a full moon. For the sun to actually understand and go, whoa!
But the ego of, let's just say, the masculine, because it's still the masculine within the feminine as well. Because for such a long time, I know.
Yeah, I'm like,
not to confuse anybody.
Take it away.
But okay, so let's say it like this. For however many years, it's been primarily masculine dominant. It's been masculine driven.
Which is just unconscious.
But I just mean, like,
so
there's not a lot of guys who are going to let down. Well, let me say it this way. The goal would be to have, we're saying, okay, the women holding a space to then teaching the guys, right? Without judgment and holding that compassion space, but then also the guys moving in and allowing themselves to be taught, because however long it's been, the guys have to have the solution. They have to solve the problems. They have to show up.
Yeah.
And outside of provider, thank you, outside of control and domination, right? So let's not villainize it.
No, but that's what it's been.
Yes.
Well, 'cause
but
you gotta remember
provider,
if
I've got to be the one. I have to, like, there's been so much pressure on that. And so it's a flipping of that perspective to then say, oh, like, you're going to teach me something. Oh, it's a provider
of two different things.
It's
a different time.
But
like,
that's a different
time. For
perspective.
thousands of years, it was like this jaguar could run into the tent and kill us right now. That's where the whole old feeling of like a man sleeping on the side of the bed that has the door in front, or an intruder, right? Or whatever. But this all is
I
ending.
still like it if a guy walks on the outside
Of
of
course,
the street.
yes. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm
fan.
saying there's a natural part that can't also be just like erased completely. But I am saying that there is this beautiful element where now the world, like, until toilets and showers and the tampon, women had it way harder, right? Like, it was not as easy. So you have to realize that there was that element of all that stuff.
Based
Right?
on a
So
suppression
now-
system.
I agree,
feminine
and
energy.
because it was very unconscious. And I think that unconsciousness was motivated unconsciously by just doing from thousands of years of survival mode forever, and we have evolved now to a new space where we don't have to do that way anymore. And I think that men, to answer the question to you ladies and the ones that are in this room that are not shifting, they are still on that old thing, because there is a sense of pride in a masculine, okay? And in the masculine, it gets afraid if their other masculine friends or anybody judges them or says, like, you're weak or you're whatever or you're to this. And I remember my moment when I went into my feminine was in third grade, when all the girls, I was playing handball all the time with everybody, and it was to impress the girls. But there was a moment where the girls were doing the jump rope, and I was like, there's all the girls hanging out there. They're not watching the boys anymore play handball. So I went and played jump rope, and I jumped rope for those 2 years and got to know all the girls. I went and saw Titanic 4 times, you know what I mean, with like 8 women. I went to Wango Tango and got to see NSYNC and, you know, Ricky Martin with Britney Spears and with 98 Degrees and all this stuff with just 30 girls and me. And it was like,
a courting,
and then all the guys were like,
You're,
oh,
like,
he must be
flirting.
gay. And then they were just seeing me mac on all the chicks. And then they were
Yeah.
like, oh, he fucking figured it out.
So it's a courting. It's like courting each other.
It was pretty simple.
And I want to like say for the masculine that's so in pride of the hyper masculinity and even to the toxic masculinity, like, do you really want to resist embracing more of your consciousness? Because that just makes you kind of an appliance for someone else. That just makes you, you know, a nice side piece to someone else's perhaps fully blossomed.
Side piece now?
No, wait, I have a question for you. I have a question for you and for you. I want to actually ask, like, because we're all like women are talking about this, but like we're not asking.
Mm-hmm.
So with these two men here, how can the feminine best support the men who are wanting to make that transition and they're feeling the resistance, they're feeling the pressure and the pride's there? Like, how can we be fully in our power and empower you?
Me?
No, because he was on a roll.
How can the feminine best empower the masculine?
Like, what do you guys need?
I already know what I'm going to say, so you know.
Maybe
I've
hold
just-
the space. We have to accept them as they are to hold the space.
Okay, but
No, we got to let them answer.
yeah.
Because I think we got to stop
Yeah,
guessing
my
for
bad.
them.
Too much.
I feel like being consciously able to be challenging to a certain extent is helpful, because I think that the pattern that's in play is one where the masculine just kind of gets to do whatever it wants, and that's part of the problem, is it gets to continue cycles that don't even serve its true consciousness, the masculine. So I think being able to not have such a deep entwinement with your self-worth or your self-concept or even what you believe that you need from another person, so that you can hold so that the feminine can hold her own to the extent that she's not threatened to, you know, drop that truth bomb or to ask that confrontational perhaps question out of fear that it's going to, you know, result in like a backlash or some kind of like,
no, he won't like me.
right,
If I do
or on some subconscious level, like I'm not going to be safe if I speak up, you know,
Or
because
not trusting yourself.
right.
Yeah.
And so I think that the feminine can really, in her own service and in the service to the masculine, realize how much more space and sovereignty there is to claim in your own field. Because I think there is that looming threat of like violence or some use of the masculine's brute force against the feminine to suppress her. But I think that as we evolve and as we go through these passages of evolution, we are empowered by greater forces to hold more of our own. And even if it doesn't seem like that and your mind is freaking out and it feels very scary, the more that your heart forward, the more that you're truly holding that very powerful electromagnetic field that the heart can hold, it can keep you safe in those situations if you stay in your heart. But the second that you let fear own you, you open yourself up to what you fear the most.
The game, yeah.
So I think, just having more solidity in and just embodiment and presence that can be kind of a little bit testing and initiating, but at the same time, having the consciousness to not have like expectations of how that gets accepted and processed and translated.
And
like, oh, he
patience,
didn't wait.
like-
Yeah, exactly. Because that's just more of the feminine just expecting the masculine to fulfill a task or a role that she wants. And I think that that's cutting the conversation short. So I think also in these dialogues, I think there needs to be more time and space, because you're not necessarily going to get to that breakthrough in one conversation or two conversations. But if you can allow it to be a dialogue and a dance that happens through the emotional wave and the ups and downs and is allowed to trickle in that clarity over time, a lot more progress can be made than if we say, oh, it ended in a fight and we're still stuck in the same place.
This comes back to the cycle of the moon and the sun.
Yeah.
So it's like you come together and then you naturally have this like phase of separation, right? But we need that polarity, we need that space, we need that separation to process and then to come back. So dope. Thank you.
So I love that. As a man who has crossed over to the conscious space,
He's a fully enlightened being.
I'm not fully enlightened at all. I'm just saying that
Birthed an
I
alien.
made the journey. You know what I mean? I'm very young too. That I think what I've noticed, especially in my older age, that I'm running into and how I can see where men who could be resistant to this is because one, there's a similarity between men and women. Like, you know, men will be like, oh, they're all bitches. They're all the same, right? Like, okay. But when you're a conscious man and you cross over, I don't look at every woman the same at all. I really don't. I don't lump women into a category. Like, if like, well, all women do this, right? So it's like, I accept every woman for who they are. Like, and I really am appreciative of what they are. And I really come in and go, oh, this is where you might need some masculinity, or this is where, like, wow, your feminine is teaching me where I can be more feminine, right? Like, there's this really good exchange. But as a man, there's a lot of women, believe it or not, who think they're in this conscious space, but what they do is they project this kind of like, oh, just by the way that you're acting, you're a toxic masculinity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there becomes like this very like, by the way you are, you're toxic. Like, automatically. I see it way more actually playing out in women than men. Because, like, even though men might say it this way, men are trying to put on a show and dance to attract a woman, right? And have them fall for us or come into the consciousness. That's what we're supposed to do, is do the song and dance. So women today are like, oh my God, he's doing a song and dance for me, but he's doing a song and dance for this. Well, we're just trying to get the fuck in the gates. Who's going to let us in the gate? A lot of women aren't letting guys in the gates, you know, and especially in the way that the world is today, they're so afraid of the masculine to come in. We're like, oh God, like I'm going to get hurt, or da-da-da-da-da. So guess what men feel like? We're feeling like, wow, we can't come in the gates because we're putting on song and dance just energetically, because that's how it's always been, to attract. And there's usually been no problems when the feminine fully accepts the masculine, as the masculine is here trying to really, once it does the song and dance and once it does everything, and if you allow it in, and if we really go there, then yeah, we'll separate from that song and dance to integrate fully in. But that's what we have to do to get in. We are here to like show off, rev our engine, fucking dance on the fucking table, fucking do whatever. That's what a woman is attracted to. But also women don't throw out the signals anymore of like that they're attracted to it. It's almost like, I don't know, you know? It's like looking at us like we're fucking up doing the circus dance now, and like, it's like, it's
because
almost like they
everybody's
want them to show up
afraid.
as a feminine.
That might have been
Because everybody's afraid. Everybody, men and women, are afraid. Everybody has relationship PTSD. But I want to know what the gate is.
The gate is
Yes. Like,
the-
wait, how do you define that?
that a woman, the woman, because it is the birther, the one that has to receive, has to receive the masculine to come in, has to let it in the door. Like, you have to let us in. We have to get a signal that we are allowed in, because then you get Harvey Weinsteins who, you know, put him on the couch and go, well, I guess the way that I'm going to get in is I'll give you a job, I'll make you some money and get you in a movie. Right? So now he's creating the in and she's not, right? So as a conscious man, we're not going to do it that way. But we need to know a signal energetically, vibrationally, that we are allowed in. And if we are allowed in, women can't get mad if once we have this idolization of that beautiful goddess, once we get in there, now we see the truth of who you are. If the frequencies don't align, that's a normal process in life, and that if it backs out, like literally, what does a pull out in sex to not come in it? I'm just using some real shit here.
Go for it.
That it's like a bad thing. Like, you fucking hurt me because I let you in. That's what the feminine, it has to allow all these stars to be born and see how it's going to hold it together and which ones that it will love it back, right? Like, that's just the way, the natural order of the universe, even with animals and everywhere. So if we're going to talk about animal rights, like a fucking dog walks around and fucking fucks that fucking girl, and that's the way that is. And it might go do that one until it finds maybe like the ducks and the swans, which are the ones that stay together forever. it might find the one that it wants. Like there becomes this weird territory now of like where it's like you are a bad person for even trying to see if the frequencies work. And so as a man, it gets castrated like, oh my God, you're just a player or whatever. It's like, I'm trying to just find a fucking frequency that works. And how are you going to find it without connecting? Like, that's impossible. It's impossible.
And what if you actually find that connection?
Then you fucking give it everything you got.
So you actually helped with Dylan's thing though too, because it's like she has to also own if she feels the connection.
Correct.
And I feel like it's like not just waiting to see if they feel the connection or if it's coming from them, but it's also
It's
like
fully
owning like
open.
what are we feeling?
Yeah,
Like,
it's about
presenting
going in
that.
fully open both sides. But
Yeah.
Couldn't we put
men
that
go in
like,
fully open, trust me, because that's what we do. But it's like if the woman starts putting up the walls and starts putting up, oh, so if we're coming in and then we're feeling that, then that's where we don't feel the connection.
But couldn't we also put this into like a little bit of like human design? I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well. It's like, okay, if you have like the projector, right? It's like if a man is like, okay, wait to be invited.
We don't want to be invited though.
No, you want to act like a manifester and go charge in wherever you want. And the woman is sitting here like a generator, like
The invitation
waiting
is a natural
to respond.
invitation.
But she has to wait to respond and how she feels
Correct,
in order
that's
to
true.
open, and then you can be a manifester and charge in.
Yes, but there comes points to where it's like
Just
if
playing
nobody,
with-
if nobody's responding for such a time, that it's like, well, sorry.
I think also it might be helpful just as a side note to add that like maybe it's masculine dominant and then feminine dominant, just because I don't think that the chase is always like male chase, feminine receive. Like it can be whatever like feminine or dominant masculine embodiment you are in the specific dynamic. Like I understand like the that you're saying. I just wanted to add that note because I think that different people can complement different other people in different ways, so that you're not always the chaser or the receiver. And that I understand that obviously to get in contact one has to receive the other, but it's obviously not. I just wanted to add this in just like clarification. Like it's not always that like the man is chasing the woman. Like we can do some shit too.
Yeah, but
Like,
I want to hear the guys on that perspective.
But every
though.
woman that I've been with, where
Yeah.
they approached me or like made out with me first, never were.
Exactly.
Well, that's one.
what I wanna know.
That's one consciousness anecdote.
I
have a very different.
It is,
don't
but
know.
then is that your masculine side that's wanting
Yeah.
to then act more as the masculine?
Correct,
and
because
so,
then the whole rest of the relationship was always that me feeling kind of like more the feminine. Like
Right.
it was like,
And then you feel
oh,
emasculated.
Maybe that's because you are someone that embodies more of your masculine, whereas like I could be a feminine that also I could be a woman that also resonates more with aligning in the masculine. So like that's also the mode that I would want to take on.
But if it doesn't swing back again, then it's
well,
not
if
ba-
the
then
male
it's
if
not.
the male embodies the more receptive role in that relationship, it could work
Yeah.
out in that. Yeah.
It's like that's also a conversation that's happening a lot, like at least with the girls that I'm talking to. It's like, okay, I feel like I'm more masculine.
Yeah.
And then now talking with the guys, then they feel emasculated where we're like,
That's on
well,
them.
but we want to, well, but no.
I mean, if
it's
it's
not,
not
that's
like
our
a-
responsibility at the same time. So in all communication, it's 100% responsibility. We can't just be like, oh, well, you're emasculated. Fuck you, bro.
Well, if
Like-
if your mode of existence isn't complementary to someone else's, then like it might be the mode of existence.
But
then.
that's what I mean of swinging back again. Because if you're going about something and then a man feels emasculated, one, sure, if he's not showing up with his masculinity, then you could say that. But where are you swinging back and being more into your feminine and allowing him to take on that role and that position? Because he can't take on that role if you're always there. If you're always sitting in that seat, where's he going to sit? I'd love to hear from the guys.
Well, I was gonna say, I do like what happens is, as a masculine, sure, we might want to come in, but if that woman is more masculine or whatever, we just will try to find the way to get in to fucking connect, and then we are willing to, as men, go through fucking hell and water to whatever to connect and find somebody who is open enough to allow that love for us to be part of. But the feminine has a lot of protective elements because, one, if they have sex and they have a baby, guess what? That's a fucking lot of responsibility right away.
And she's been taking on the
Right?
responsibility.
Yeah,
Correct. So
there's so
there's
much
a lot
fear.
of fucking blocks in the feminine, believe it or not, more than the masculine when a masculine is trying to cross over. So you have to be willing to, okay, then fucking put a condom on, dude. Like, tell a guy, fucking put a condom on. or whatever. But it's like, that's where this whole moment is like, men are not scared, believe it or not, to come in. We're not scared.
As a generalization, I would like. There's always like
Right.
always nuances.
You're right about that. But I would say in general, if you understand masculine energy, it is going to drive all the way in,
But
and see what is
also
in there,
that's-
and it wants to go through the lobby and go up the elevator and into the room.
And
But every woman's at the lobby.
And that's the nature of the feminine. Like, even when you think about the sperm and the egg, only one of the billions of sperm actually gets allowed to enter into that egg and fertilize it. It's like, that's the law of, natural selection. Not every masculine's going to get let in, but every masculine can still be in ownership enough of himself that rejection doesn't have to be a source of, a denial of your masculinity or a way to become feeling like you've been stepped on, or, it's just a way for you to actually become more aware of the triggers that come with being in a masculine embodiment. And that's where you actually become more conscious. And when you do that, your frequency has changed. And maybe you do then qualify to be welcomed in by the feminine in a way that you weren't expecting to. Because, yeah, the masculine does want to really drive forward and just penetrate. But it's not without that perfect
Natural selection.
Those perfect conditions.
That's right.
And even within birth, there needs to be these perfect conditions of pH balance and, nutrients and stuff. And it's like, if we're just raging bulls, that environment is not going to exist. So we as men need to also realize that we are stewards of this environment to create the ideal conditions for, for us to be received in the way that we want to be received, and for the feminine to feel like it's worth her time to undergo all of that pressure and responsibility of entertaining that energy in her field. Because as the feminine rises, it's going to be less and less attractive for these sovereign beings who are coming out of even identifying so much with the polarity of gender, for them to even want to fuck with some dude that's just going to cause a bunch of problems. And that's like the history that we're dealing with, if we really are talking about it in the terms of the last 500 to 1,000 years. No wonder there's been a lot of like pillaging and war and destruction on behalf of the masculine. And that's a story that we don't necessarily need to keep retelling, but it's definitely one that has impacted where we are right now. We have to honor that, because we can't form the new unless we respect the old to some degree, at least in terms of awareness.
Yes. So my whole thing about the lobby is, I understand the lobby has to be there. That's what women need to have. But it's like, and as a guy, there's a lot of men out there who can't handle rejection, right? So it's like, you went in the lobby, it didn't work out. That's fine. You didn't get in the room, no big deal. But a lot of men go, oh my God, now I can't ever get in any room.
Right.
I'm somebody who just is like, let me just keep going in lobbies. You know what I mean? Like, until I find a connection that's ready. That's just truth.
It's nothing personal. It's just vibrational.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this energetic vibration of people trying to find whether it's the vibration or not. So there's a rejection on both sides that you can't be afraid of or weird of. If that doesn't work, no big deal. You just move on to the next thing.
Right.
But there becomes a point where, what if there is the connection there, and the masculine is trying to come in, and then it's like putting up, like, oh, well, I had this happen to me, or I want it to be this way. And it's like, okay, chivalry is about accepting of that. But there comes to a point too where it's like, don't you want to be had? Don't you want to be accepted and like given something? Because that is the receiving end of feminine energy.
I have a question on that though, in regards to you guys with the masculine. So let's say, because there's also a lot of conversation with the masculine, feel free to correct, obviously, about freedom, right? And this desire for freedom, even in a relationship. And so let's say you create that connection, but then like a woman is not going to feel safe if the energy doesn't feel certain. So even if he's coming in with like, I want to get through the lobby and into the door, if he still has a perspective potentially, right, of like, oh, do I want this or do I not want this? Or like, am I going to give up my freedom if I go here? Like, and then that's an uncertainty within him. And women listen to energy before they listen to words, before they listen to actions. It's always energetic first. So if she's not feeling an energy of certainty and it feels wobbly, then she's not going to be so
maybe
open
that's
and
not
inviting.
natural selection. Then it's not working.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking
Because everybody's in here been in love before, right?
No, totally. But I'm
And
asking
it's
about
just
the
a
conversation
natural,
of
just
freedom.
like bam, 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 bam. There was no uncertainty. There was no anything. It just click, boom, click, 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 bam.
So how do you work with the conversation of wanting freedom at the same time? Is that
There
an
is no such
uncertain-
thing as freedom, because the freedom is the love in which you're sharing, and that's freedom.
Talk on it. I'd love to hear.
And
Yeah.
and freedom of a guy wanting freedom is usually a guy who's wanting to live in the idealization of the show and dance that got him in the lobby. But once you're in the lobby and you find somebody that you really love and that you're going to fully do, there is the ultimate freedom, which is love, not the show and dance, which is trying to find that true connection. So there is no such thing as like, I need my freedom. It's more like, oh, I just want to be able to go do my creative thing right now and then come right back to you because I'm going to gain all of my fucking consciousness through you. That's going to make me more fucking creative. You know what I mean? Like, I got my greatest downloads in my life, in my most loving relationship in my life, while like I was connecting, like, thank you God, thank you God, thank you God, like consciousness, 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 consciousness.
Wait, you were plugged in, basically.
Yeah. Well, not even just having sex, but just in full love, where we just,
no.
that's it. Like, we don't care about anything else. It's just us, and it's just the love, and it's just yes.
Because love is God consciousness.
Yeah, totally. So it's like,
Sex is too.
so it's like, I think there comes a point to where, there's just, I've seen it more in today's society than ever, because I remember being in high school and it was just like, it wasn't like I was playing the field. It was like, man, I had a girlfriend, that we went to prom and we loved each other in this. And even in the beginning of like the 2000s, it was like, it was just like, you just knew. And it's about that solar plexus knowing, not the mind. It's just like, you feel it, I feel it, like, what's the deal? Like, but I think like the masculine kind of gets over that whole what's the deal and just goes, I want to fucking love, and that's what women want too. But they have to realize that they're having to accept the energy that wants to love. They're an acceptor. Men are wanting to be chivalrous and give that love and honor that, because our job is to honor the feminine, and our job is to not only, in the old way protect it, maybe there's a new system, but mainly it's just to honor it and to give it that initiation of understanding the consciousness that it holds.
And also, I feel like, just to be fair, I think that also men need to look at, like, are you receiving what women are giving? Like, I feel like there's also
Well, I was just talking about that. Oh my, I wouldn't be here fucking, thank God for, and I'll even say her name, thank God for my ex Erica. Like, oh my God, she changed my life.
I think there's also, for perspective, something to be said for, how much time and energy rejection can save you, because we've all seen how consuming a bad relationship that's not actually in alignment is, that maybe we clung to or forced because we wanted it from a mental or an egoic place, but the geometry and the chemistry wasn't really there, the frequency wasn't really there. So if it's not a match, thank God for that.
Yeah.
Thank Goddess for that, because we lose ourselves in relationships sometimes. And that's something I see a lot with clients. They spend years intertwined with somebody who's not actually that good for them because they wanted to feel safe or validated.
Right.
And that to me is a tragedy. So along those lines, it's like sometimes, we have to just trust the higher plan at play and realize that it's not always some kind of shortcoming that causes that to not happen. It's actually, it's a moment of grace. So,
Well, yeah. And Leo is love. It's through play.
Also, now that I think that we're exponentially operating at a higher consciousness, and so as we as we operate faster, we can move through relationships faster, and we won't necessarily need, like, not that you can, but we won't necessarily need like the 50-year-long marriage. Like, we might get our lessons with people faster, and therefore after you get that vibration might not be a match, and that's not a failing on your part, and that's not like bad. It's simply like you learned your lesson and now you can continue on to the next.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've seen that more in the Saturn-Pluto cycle of Libra more than ever. I think that's coming to an end, and I don't think any conscious being knows what that's going to look like on the other side after January. And that's why I think this is like the peak of this moment, the big question for everybody. Because I think the underlying secret that a lot of people won't admit is that with Pluto and Saturn that met there in Libra and the cycle hasn't ended, is that underneath there is this, something's still not in alignment. No matter how much the projection of Pluto is trying to manipulate the perfect Saturn in its exaltation of Libra, of like, oh no, we're great, you know? Especially social media fuels that Pluto Saturn of like the presentation, that it's all perfect and harmonious and it's great. When really underneath, you know, it's not. So it's like owning that, what's not, trying to find if there is a counterbalance and to figure it out. And if it's not, that's where Pluto's like, yep, implode it and move on. And that's what's been scary for people, because going through relationships and going through a divorce that I have, like, it's like imploding that is fucking very difficult. Holy shit. But that's what allows you to learn the greatest lessons of your life and move to a better space. But as you move to the new space, and this is the deepest like Leo transit I've seen in a long time, and I'm a Leo, so of course I follow him a lot, is that this is a moment, I close my eyes because I channel this love very deeply, is like, it's not a serious thing. And I think that the feminine, of course, has the right to take it very seriously, but love comes from this place where you allow fun and to allow laughter and to allow like that just embodiment of like looking at each other like purely from where you sit as the individual you are, however you are. That it's not like, oh, I want you to change your frequency right here. I want you to change that. I wish they would change that. You know, I can be honest, as a double Leo with Venus Leo, Juno conjunct with Mercury Leo. I'm a Leo fucking parade, right? And Mars and Saturn and Scorpio. So my description of this is penetration of love to the moon and Taurus exalted to the best and to build the greatest emotional, deepest love connection in the world. That in that position, it's like, I have never ever in a place where I went into a relationship with love been like, God, I wish you just changed this. Or I hear a lot of women tell me like, God, yeah, I had a boyfriend who like wouldn't let me wear this, or he wouldn't let me do
Fuck
this,
that.
or he
Wear what
would,
you want.
you know what I mean? But there's a lot of women who have been through that. I've heard that, and I've been like, I've never been that way because I love you exactly for who you are, fully.
Control and manipulation.
Yeah, it's like, I
out
don't
of
give a
fear.
fuck. Like, whatever you're doing, I mean, he was even at the point with one ex-girlfriend and how I got on meth. She did meth, and I was like, whatever, fucking, I love you so much. Maybe it wasn't the most healthiest thing, but I completely loved her fully for who she was. And that was a hard relationship to get out of because it wasn't healthy for the drug use. But that still true power of what we call love, the balancing beam of a relationship is different than love. Right? Love and relationship are separate. So love can be there, but relationship doesn't work, or a relationship works, but love's not there. And then you have Scorpio, which is like, is the real passion really there or not? You know, that's the glue. So it's like, these are the areas that are all different. But as somebody who has those two, I will actually have Pluto and Libra, so all of them, I'm somebody who knows that I will find a way to understand all those aspects and just come to you fully on my hands and knees as a knight that will honor and serve you and love you fully for the embodiment of the beauty that you are right now. And I want to lift you up and separate myself from the idealization that I did to try and get into this place, but now make a commitment and an honorable and integrity commitment to be fully there for you 100% and to love you fully. And I feel that there's a lot of women who want that so bad, but when it actually shows up, it's like, you know, and I know that men can do the same thing too, but men were really willing to go that really extra mile, you know? That's that little extra mile that they're willing to go. Like all the way in and like drive fucking 24 hours in one night to get to you if we have to. We will do that. That's true love. That's where people don't do that. I've done that. I have driven.
It's a man thing because I feel like.
Yeah, no, I know there's women who do that too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that
It's
it's
a
like,
masculine mode thing, and if you're a woman who identifies with more of her masculine, it could also be a strength of yours.
yeah.
Or just a passion thing.
Speak from that angle.
So maybe,
yeah.
I'm speaking from, I guess, all angles.
Yeah.
I was kind of just, I guess, in that idealization of me and
No, yeah,
my masculine.
channel.
So, but I've seen that in others too. But it's like maybe it's meeting on that same frequency. Like both people are like, no matter what, like, woo-hoo, you know what I mean? That's when you know. That's when you know right there. It's just like, yes. There is no just, and this is where everything comes to what Dylan said about leaving the state of mind and coming to the solar plexus. That's just a knowing, just knows. Like there's no questions that have to keep being answered or weird things or even communication. It's a true knowing.
It's your spirit moving through you.
Yeah, yeah. It's a spirit that just goes and allows for the yeah. You know.
Just like.
I don't know. This was a beautiful conversation. I actually feel like I got back to that real space and where I feel that that's how I love myself.
Right.
So I think how you love is how you love yourself.
Yeah.
And that's how I love myself. And so a lot of people are triggered by me. Like, this fucking pompous asshole. It's like, no, I fucking really do care and love and honor myself so much. And I give myself love and I love myself every day. And I make sure that my cats are happy and that my bed's made the way I want to. And I love it. And I want to make everybody happy. And I want to share space with other people and give other people their voices. And I want to make sure that everybody wins. Because I want to make sure that I win and that everybody wins.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, well, I had a great time talking. Anybody? Oh, we'll just do last words. Everybody get their last thing out. We'll just go down the row.
Down the row. Yeah, I feel like I love that we're ending on this note and everything that you said. And I really feel like the astrology right now is so beautiful, just like to really tune out all of the shit and just like come into full alignment with yourself and own, like we don't have, relationships can be growth vehicles, but we can grow in other avenues in our lives as well. And we can, when we fully embody and own and embrace like that love for ourselves and we're like ready for that in a partnership and a committed, like a conscious commitment, then you can receive that. Like you can ask for that, receive that, you can do that, and you can put the growth in something else, like in another area of your life. But I feel like this is about respecting yourself and loving yourself and giving yourself the chance to just be naturally embodied and naturally like you. Like just like, I don't know, life feels like it's getting a lot more simple and a lot more joyful in that way. Like just like it doesn't have to be hard. And so, yeah, that.
With this Leo season, I think of the phrase following your excitement. And then with the Virgo season coming up, make the decisions that will build a firm foundation for that to grow through. So whatever your excitement, build a relationship with it, and maybe think of like courting the excitement or like pursuing that. And then when Virgo season comes and it's a more feminine, passive energy, what are the decisions you can make to hold space for that and to see that relationship for yourself as the foundation for the mirror that will reflect back to you. So make it a squeaky clean mirror.
This was fun. This was powerful. This was really like, I feel like I hope everybody in the chat like also equally kind of got some solid juicy nuggets.
Like a vortex, like I can just feel the
it started spinning a lot faster. So I mean, I feel so like good and complete. I guess the last thing that I would really just want to share with somebody, whoever this is meant for, is just bringing it back to you are the conscious creator of your reality and your relationships and everything. Like your personal power is a choice. In every single moment, it's a choice. Even if it's something that's fear-based, that's still, right? Like fear is, you're not choosing, right? You're reacting, but at the same time, bringing everything back to your conscious awareness and what it is that you really want to be able to create, not just within yourself, but then how you're relating. And I mean, other than that, we need to all just stop taking it so seriously. Yeah. Spirituality, relationships, our diets, like what you eat, what's supposed to be enlightened food and not, and like everything is so serious, and we've lost maybe that like innocence and that internal like play and that fun and that inner child. And especially in relationships, like how you were saying, like it's all, oh, it's hard work now. Like we're supposed to be relating to each other and having fun relating to each other, and setting that as an intention to get back to that, I feel like would, just what your intentions are would really like open up that space a lot more for how we're gonna, like what next level do we wanna like have in our relating reality and breaking the cycle of past.
Love that. There's so much to be said for how nuanced and unique we all are. And there's a definite depth to how uniquely we all connect. And I think that while the dialogue is important, I think an even greater importance lies on knowing ourselves, just devoid of all labels, of all homogenized terms that try to like put us in boxes or, black and white us, whatever. And I think the path to least resistance, the path to that joy, that purity, that true love comes from knowing who you are and who you're not, and you know the truth by the way it feels. So when you can really embody that, all of this argumentative polarity becomes irrelevant to you, because you're in tune with you're in your lane, you're on your fractal, and on your fractal you're going to find the best people, the best opportunities, and the best moments for you to come and be and see what you came here to be and see. So know thyself, and everything else will be easy breezy and fun.
I agree with that statement, all these statements completely, especially that when it comes to that fun, when it comes to that love, it really does start with yourself. It really does start with, like, I'll be honest, I laugh at myself every second of the day and love the way that I drive the car around and do this, and the way that I laugh at myself, the way that I do the show, or how I will do that. Every part of my life is just how much I love the way that I set the kitty's bowl in a certain way that I know the cat will like not like it for a second and watch her go, and then we'll go, hey, I'm just kidding. It's like every little part of your soul that allows yourself to be a kid, that lets yourself be in true love. When you love that about yourself so much, that's going to come back into your life so much more. And so if energy is not ready for that, that's okay. You have to just be like, that's all right. Like you can't castrate somebody for how they are or what they do. Like, this is a time where it's just like, offer them an option for love. Like, offer them an option for just being who they are and allowing them to be who they are. Because if we just start being like, oh my gosh, like I can't talk to you, you did this, or da-da-da, it's like you're focusing on everything that when you're in love that you don't focus on in love. Everything you focus on in love is like, I love the way that you make that little smirk fucking when you look out the window and you just got a great idea in your head, or just those, it's the simplest little things. And so these serious things, and I love how, Serah said that, these serious things are so not how we're going to survive the world. It is not going to be this calculative mind of how many people and how many of this and how many of that. It is literally going to be the way most people die of heart attacks when they're in their most unhappy part of their life. And that's like in the scientific psychological data. So if you're not happy, like you're not going to thrive. And so this is a very major moment where the audience, if it doesn't like the way that you are, that's just not your frequency at audience, and to not be mad at them and to be like, okay, that's just what it is. I don't know how many auditions I've been on in my life where they didn't like me, and I'm like, okay, I don't feel bad. There's 200 people that look exactly like me. I'm sure they'll find somebody. That's the weirdest thing when you go to Hollywood, is that there's a room full of 250 people, and how in the fuck did they find all 250 that look exactly like me? That is the weirdest feeling in your life that you'll ever go through. And you can't get weird about that. You learn to go, that's okay. These people have maybe a similar frequency, but underneath is maybe a different one. And to not focus so much on the outside of that frequency, but the inside, and be like, you know what? That's not meant for me. That's okay. And to just keep doing you, because it will attract everything that you need at every moment. And don't be willing to not experience it. With Jupiter now in Sag, this is a very rare moment with all these dignified positions. I've been saying that a lot. This is the most potency ever. Why not try the potent energy and experience the potent energy? You'd be stupid not to. Because it's not going to be this potent again. Do the math on that. That's all the mind's meant to do, is the simple equations in life. Like, is this blue and is this green? It's blue. Okay, great. Like, is this, in astrology, it might be a really intense mathematical equation, but it's pretty much like, will this ever happen again with Jupiter in its dignity, Saturn in its dignity, the Sun in its dignity, Neptune in its dignity? No, will not. So, if you want the big three, this is the last week. Sun in its dignity, that's the highest points in all astrology. Go on an astrology chart and play with dignities. The Sun in Leo is the highest dignity, and I know that people get triggered by that shit. No, I get a lot of it, like, oh God, you think it's like, no, it's because that energy has to perform at a high level of intensity and inspiration and give life to others through the immersion of that love in self, and show the way of how to be that love and own it, and not be afraid to put your fucking sticker on everything, and own that and be okay with that. Like, people are afraid of that. People are afraid of owning themselves. People are afraid of loving themselves that much. It's not ego. Ego is like when it's not from love. So don't waste this moment to not go on the greatest adventure of love of your life, because you'll miss something, but you will gain the knowledge of what you missed to maybe then in your future find a way to do that. But this is a moment where there are opportunities more than ever. And if we see what's coming up, there's not a lot of opportunities. So don't waste them for victimization, or that you're not ready, because you're perfect the way you are right now.
Amen.
Thanks for being a part of After Dark. This is, I am the salesman of the spiritual community, if you all didn't know. So, you want to check out highvibe.tv, where we have these awesome things. I'm just not even going to go there with all that, because you know what? I'm just going to just tell you all that we all love you here. I love all of you for being here so much.
Thank you.
Everybody's opinion. Everybody was saying that this was the most powerful show, that all 5 people on this panel were fully in their own unique light and totally respectful and loving of each other. It was amazing to read that.
Yeah,
So
it was.
sweet.
It was fun.
It was. And Craig, who stood with us the whole time in the back, generating this energy for us. We got to give him some love. And his laughs in the background were hilarious, because he was just and I was just listening. I'm like, oh, I can't give that away.
Powerful.
But I just want to thank you all very much. And we have all the links for everybody up here that's on the show right underneath this video. Their Instagrams, their websites. We have a lot of things that are going to be coming out. Serah and I have to talk about. Both Serahs and I are talking about some programs that we need to talk about. Dylan and I are talking about some programs. And even Maren and I were talking about some stuff. So there is a lot going to be coming at you if it's all in alignment. So it's that's the beautiful thing right now. It's if everything's in alignment and all feels good, it's just go for it. Love you all very much. We'll see you anywhere in the universe. We all are.
Farewell.
Peace out.
Dope.